Board of Education to order. The next regular Board of Education meeting is on Tuesday, November 12th at 7:30 PM in the Board of Education meeting room. Start with a couple of remarks. No, excuse me. I have a series of thank yous this evening. First, I'd like to thank all the volunteers, staff, and students who made this homecoming weekend such a success. Soccer and football games were exciting, presided over by the beautiful flag suspended on one of our fire trucks and illuminated by another. Saturday night was our first homecoming dance in something like 15 years. Apparently, we sold 768 tickets to the dance. That's more than half of our students and is very exciting. I heard that the girls said it was really fun and the boys said it was okay. On behalf of the Board of Education, I wish to thank the homecoming co-chairs, Sarah Hesley and Kathy Lockers, and the DHSPA co-chairs, Kelly Scallon, Beth Lane, and all of the many, many hands, including dozens of parents, many staff, including the administrative staff who helped set it all up and then showed up there that night, the teachers and the paraprofessionals who helped chaperone, and of course, all the students who showed up, took a risk, and had fun. I also want to talk about the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, we had Construction Worker Appreciation Week. So our thanks to the principals at Hanley Homes and Royal who organized that on behalf of the construction workers. All of the kids made cards. I had adorable examples to show, but they're on my desk at home. Generally, the kids thought of a lot of really clever way to say thank you. They also had some funny comments, anything from being willing to give the construction workers unlimited time to finish this important work, to offering to help with lowering the construction noise by some consultation time. Overall, most of them were just profoundly grateful that their schools are being enlarged and improved. So it was really fun to hear from the kiddos. Thanks to the principals for organizing that on behalf of the community. Lastly, I'd like to take a moment, you can look up, to express our sincere gratitude to Julie Best for her dedicated service on our Board of Education. While she's been volunteering for our schools for much longer than this, for the past 3 years, Julie's been a tireless advocate for our students on behalf of our community. Yeah, I'm going to make you cry, and then Sarah's going to make it worse.
It's not hard, but you're going to.
As Chair of Communications, Julie led our discussions on how to improve our communication with parents, teachers, and the public. Her efforts will culminate in a comprehensive communications plan that will serve as a valuable blueprint for years to come. Thank you. Julie also served as Chair of Policy, was a consistent supporter of arts education, and spoke up often about providing a range of academic opportunities for all of our students. On behalf of this board, our fellow government boards, and our community, thank you, Julie, for your commitment and your unwavering support of our schools. And then Sarah.
I am going to echo Jill's comments and extend a huge thank you to you as you step down. For 3 years, I'm not going to do this.
Nope.
For 3 years, your selfless service and your dedication to Darien's children, faculty, and staff has been evident during each and every meeting. Your leadership, your vision, your commitment to ensuring all children are offered the best education is a strong example for all of us to follow. You've consistently shown your passion for creating and ensuring an equitable and innovative education opportunities for all. Your work will be deeply missed by all of us on this board and all of us in this room. If anybody lives up to their name, it's you. You truly are the best. You are smart, you're thoughtful, you're pragmatic, and you're centered. Your contributions at this table will continue to live in our future work. On a personal note, when I met you soon after we moved to town 15 years ago, I had no idea,
It's okay.
how much you and our friendship would come to mean to me. We've worked together in many roles over the past 15 years, and our friendship has grown stronger during each one of those. While I am so excited for you to have the time back in your day to care for and focus on those closer to you, your seat here will never be the same, and I will miss you tremendously. All the best to you, Julie Best.
We've got some stuff for you, some things.
Anybody got a camera? Thank you.
If you want to.
Thank you. For anyone who may not know, we are the three easiest criers in the world, so you just got a trifecta there. Thank you. It's, I very much appreciate all your kind words. It's been three, kind of long, hard years, but worthwhile all the way through. I wouldn't undo any of it, so thank you all for that. Keep it up. You know, I may be checking in periodically. It remains to be seen, but thank you. And you know, always remember it's about the kids. Thanks.
Okay, and with that, I'll turn it to public comment.
Good evening. If anybody in person would like to participate in public comment, please come up to the podium and wait for the chair to recognize you. For those online, we will handle the people in person first, and then we will move to the people online. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. Please note the time with the chair.
Lori Olson, 16 Littlebrook Road North. Julie, as your term on the Board of Education comes to a close, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that while this hasn't always been easy, you have remained steady. You've done the research, listened to others, and carefully considered every perspective before offering your own. I admire your strength, leadership, and integrity. You've been a perfect example of what it means to serve with purpose and fairness, and I'm proud to call you a friend. Thank you for all you've done and for the example you've set for all of us.
Stacy TA, 10 Clocks Lane. Julie, I am grateful for your work ethic and your dedication to our students. You are a thinker. You are a listener who seeks to understand and a rational decision maker. You inspire me by your ability to remain calm and focused on what matters and to work on the work that's in front of you when things become tense and distracting on this board. You are truly a woman of integrity and character. You're someone that I am thankful that my daughter looks up to, that I look up to. And our town has been fortunate to have you to serve on this board for the past 3 years. And I am fortunate that you are my bestie. Thank you for your service to our children.
Hello, my name is Tegman Collins and I live at 3 Circle Road. I'm here this evening as a mother of 3 children in the Darien school system. I am grateful to each of you for your service and your commitment, and I fully appreciate that the decisions you must make on the behalf of our students and our schools are not always easy ones. We have a shared goal in prioritizing the health and well-being of Darien students and doing all that we can to support their growth and development into thriving adults. I am here tonight to ask that a healthy start time at DHS be added back to the agenda and that Dr. Adley's plan, as outlined in April, move to implementation phase, specifically with a transportation study to be completed in the coming months, so we adhere to the timeline. At the April board meeting, Dr. Adley called the research on healthy start times clear and compelling and beyond dispute. And more than 510 Darien parents have added their names in support of a change at DHS through grassroots outreach. As you all discussed in May, the crux is implementation. The good news is Dr. Adley outlined a plan, and many of our peer towns have made the shift, so we can learn from them. In addition, we may already have a framework to create efficiencies with next steps, specifically around transportation. I'm referring to the transportation studies discussed in 2020 around the high school walk radius. The report, if you find it on the depths of the Board of Education site, included an option to shift all elementary schools to the same start time of 9 a.m. and further noted, quote, another advantage was to allow for better outcomes to move high school and middle schools to a later start time, such as 8:30 or 8:45. So the work is not starting from scratch. Another opportunity may lie in slightly expanding the scope of coordination with First Student about PLC days, as in the current budget proposal, to draw more value from that work as it relates to exploration of healthy start times. These, of course, are just observations from an outsider, but as a mom of 3 and a business owner, spotting potential opportunities for efficiency is a necessity. Thank you for keeping the focus on doing what's in the best interest of our kids and for role modeling for how our youth can work together to overcome perceived barriers and develop creative and efficient solutions that will have a lasting impact on our kids for generations to come.
Crystal Hill, CDSP Chair, 300 Brookside Road. I wanted to speak to you all tonight regarding the concerns that CDSP and our PTO reps are hearing from parents regarding the issues students are facing given the reduction of 8 middle school and 2 elementary special teachers during last year's budget process. First, at MMS, we have heard many complaints from parents about large class sizes, teachers remarking that their student caseloads are higher than they have ever been, and more students experiencing rainbow classes than in the past. Based on the data provided in tonight's materials, that does appear to be the reality at MMS. The argument made initially for why these changes were necessary is that too many sections were falling outside the BOE recommended class size guidelines of 18 to 24 students. However, these teacher reductions have not achieved any change in that. In fact, the problem is now worse. In review of the charts applied for this evening compared to the same charts provided last year, in the prior year for core classes, there were 37 classes with 14 or fewer students and 2 with 24 or more. With the changes in place this year, we have only reduced the number of small size classes to 32 and now have 29 classes at over 24 students. That's an over 50% increase in the number of classes not in line with the BOE policy. The small classes haven't gotten larger. The classes that were already within BOE policy are now larger and 15 times more likely to be above the recommended maximum of 24 students. We are not provided class size data by grade, but given that team reduction only occurred in 6th and 7th grade, it's easy to assume that these large class sizes are disproportionately affecting 6th and 7th graders. At the elementary school, the loss of music and art specialist teachers have led to the following complaints. Students are receiving less band and orchestra instruction in small group lessons by 5 to 6 lessons a school year due to a move to a 6-day cycle. Additionally, with the move to a 6-day cycle, there are numerous students who receive special education services or in the gifted program who have weekly conflicts now with music lessons and their pull-out services. Some parents have expressed a feeling that their students have to choose between being involved with music and receiving their services. Students are receiving less art instruction due to the loss of rotational art time and the resignation of one art teacher after the start of the school year. There's been concerns that at least partially was due to the change of her position to itinerant. Students, particularly our youngest learners, are now having a much harder time adjusting to daily schedules since specials are no longer on a routine schedule, but varying times from day to day. Parents were told last year that none of the scheduling changes would impact student programming, but how can a reduction in the time with the arts not be considered a reduction in student programming? Last year, myself, PTO reps, and parents expressed many concerns to this board that the unintended consequences of these teacher reductions had clearly not been fully considered. And now our students are dealing with those unintended consequences. Thank you.
If we have nobody left in person, if you are online, please use the raised hand icon and wait to be, oh, sorry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Violet Alday. I reside at 51 Locust Hill Road. I'll be short and sweet. I came to lend my voice to the conversation around the school start times and the importance of a later start time for especially the high school students. And I know that you've seen the research and I know that you know the importance of it. And as Tegwin said and others here tonight in support of this, we would like to see it continue to be discussed on the agenda and moved forward. So I just want to thank you for that.
Good evening, Laura Pesh-Gray, 11 Parsons Walk. I'm one of the 500 parents that have supported our high school and middle school to start later by signing the petition. While every child's circadian rhythm is different in teens, 8 to 10 hours of sleep is essential, and my teens are not seeing anything close to that. Homework, papers, studying are causing them to be up till 11, 12 o'clock. We're not even in mid-time season yet. One can barely get out of bed at 7 a.m. I'm witnessing exhaustion, stress, anger, outbursts, anxiety, depression. This behavior is not sustainable for their physical and mental health. I understand that some of the teachers at the high school also want to have grades affected if children are late. I'm hoping that this is something that we can reconsider and look at. I'm all about consequences, but that will certainly add more stress to our students if they show up 5 to 10 minutes late to a 7:40 class. The concern about homework all being on computers, since our kids start at 7:40 and they're doing homework till midnight, they're in front of screens, that bringing more stress and anxiety, lack of sleep due to blue screen effect. You all know the details and the facts. I just would like for us to understand, since it's been part of the Board of Ed budget, and I'd like for us to revisit this to the agenda, add it back to the budget immediately so that we can prevent our kids from the stress, the depression that I'm witnessing, and further potential negative outcomes. In addition, parents have come to me about the bus and the opt-in situation. With later start times, we have to revisit our bus study survey. I was informed that, at least in the past, we knew how many kids were riding the bus. Now, since everyone has forced an opt-in, we really don't know. 55% of Darien High School bus pickups are before 6:40 a.m., which is not allowing our teens to get more sleep. So parents are driving rather than taking the bus. Traffic is also a disaster as a result, and I feel like we are wasting taxpayers' money with buses not running full. Elementary kids, I've been told by a friend and neighbor, and this is happening in all areas, not just Parsons Walk and Old Parish, they're on the buses longer and getting off at random stops, which bus drivers are allowing them to do. We have less or no control over the whereabouts of our kids if they're getting off at random stops. And, with the elimination of the watches and the cell phones, which we're all in favor of, it just becomes a safety issue and a concern for our kids. Is there a task force handling something like this with buses? How do we get this as well on the Board of Ed agenda? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sarah Walker, 11 Contentment Island Road. I have 3 kids in the Darien school system, so thank you, Julie, and thank you all of you for your service. I'm also here to implore the Board of Education and Dr. Adley to continue the work and the process you started last year to look at changing the start time at Darien High School. As has been mentioned, the science connecting teen sleep to both mental health and learning is clear, and many towns around us have acknowledged this and made the change accordingly. I'm hearing an increasing number of parents here in Darien wondering why we have not yet started to fix our own early start program. I've also heard so much gratitude for the measures you've recently implemented around phones in schools to help improve the atmosphere for learning and for mental health. And I think it is now time to tackle another angle of the challenge, which is the Darien High School start time. The benefits will accrue to nearly all Darien students at some point, and we should not delay the timeline further because teen mental health and health overall is too important. So thank you so much.
Do we have any more in person to participate? Okay, moving to online. If anyone online would like to participate in public comment, please use the raised hand icon and wait to be recognized. Please state your name and address for the record and note that you will have up to 3 minutes to speak. Going first is Mrs. Vomaca. You are recognized. Please unmute yourself and begin.
Hello, Carrie Vomaca, 14 Harbor Road. I am speaking as co-chair of the Middlesex Parents Association. Thank you for sharing the report tonight on MMS student distribution. I want to raise a few questions and concerns on behalf of MMS parents. Last year, there was extensive discussion at the board level about the importance of remaining within policy on class size. My understanding is that in 6th to 8th grade, policy guidelines recommend between 18 to 24 students per class. I would ask the board to consider if that range is appropriate, if there is going to be tolerance for consistently being at the top of or exceeding that threshold on a regular basis. If I read tonight's report correctly, this year we have 29 core academic classes, over 24 students. That number jumps to 48 when you include the specials. At 48, we are looking at almost 9% of all classes at MMS being above guidelines for class size. This concerns me. Research shows that smaller class sizes can lead to better student outcomes. Research also shows that it helps teachers and reduces behavioral issues. That is true in academic and non-academic subjects alike. Tonight, I encourage all board members to have as much outrage about class sizes going above policy guidelines as you had last year with respect to class sizes that were below policy guidelines. While smaller class sizes create financial questions for you as a board and for our town as a whole, they generally do not impact student outcomes negatively in the way that larger class sizes sometimes can. Additionally, I would request that the board looks beyond what has been published tonight to request statistics by grade and to share that information publicly. Given that we have reduced only the 6th and 7th grades to 3 teams and the 8th grade remains with 4 teams, I wonder if there are material differences that would come to light if we could see that level of detail. While average class sizes look reasonable enough at a high level, the majority of class sizes seem to be significantly larger than the mean would indicate. The most common class size this year seems to be 24. Averages, especially at a school level, can mask a lot. We would like to see by grade and by subject how many classes are at 24 students or more. Finally, I also would ask that you dig into what percentage of classes are happening off team and seek to understand the impact on students and teachers. The data shared tonight just shows how the rainbow kids break down across subjects, but tells us nothing of what percentage of students are in classes off team for at least one class. My anecdotal experience tells me it is a high number. I've heard repeatedly from members of this board that as long as we are within policy, you are doing your job. At this juncture, I would ask that you all really think about if the policy is adequate for Darien's Middle School to provide the best education possible for our students and to remain one of the top districts that parents expect when they move here. Thank you.
Well done. Mr. Pombar, you are recognized. Please unmute yourself and begin.
Good evening. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you to the board. For those of you I know personally on the board, great to see you. Good evening. And to Julie Best, thank you for your service. I just want to start quickly by saying, again, echo that to the entire board. You all are doing yeoman's work for our kids and doesn't go unnoticed. Greatly appreciate it. And that's coming from someone who has personal experience. I grew up in a home where my father was the chair of the board of ed at a large school district out in Long Island, and I saw what he went through. And so thank you. I just wanted to say quickly, I had 3 kids that went through Darien High School, one remaining there, who's a senior this year. I am also speaking out tonight in support of later school start times. Earlier speakers have shared my views much more eloquently than I will. So thank you, but I'm going to take a slightly different approach to that same goal. As I know you've heard some or all of this before, but it's worth repeating because there's just some simple facts that are simply more powerful than me just rereading scientific studies or spewing emotional views. So I would just reiterate, again, this is nothing you haven't heard, but it's worth repeating. We know that our teenagers need at least 9 hours of sleep. We know that they're not getting that. There's been national surveys, there's been local surveys, and that's obviously a concern. So I can appreciate that later start times won't fix this alone, but I do think that any small help will be valuable, and that we need to take a multi-pronged approach to this. So 2, the CDC, the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, and the American Psychological Association all endorse later sleep times. And I know that we rely on these reputable agencies or organizations for many other important decisions we make for our teenagers. So why not this? Let's just continue that. Further, pushing back schools times, start times, we know will not only add sleep benefits for our students, but also for teachers and administrators and parents too, of course. So, and then lastly, it's my understanding that there are many neighboring towns that have implemented later start times for their high schools, including Greenwich, who I believe is at 8:30, New Canaan, Newtown, and Westport. So I can appreciate there's a lot of concerns around this topic. Change is hard. But, you know, I think that we need to make these important changes for our kids' sakes. And the board has always found a way to make these important changes. So I would encourage you to do the same here. In summary, I would just say that our society needs to do a better job of prioritizing sleep. As adults, we pay lip service to it, but we don't always practice what we preach with our kids. I would say we also need to start prioritizing things like meditation with our kids. And that's meditation, not medication, but that's for another topic for another time. The point being here, the times are changing. I think we need to adopt with the times, and I am full support for later start times. So thank you again to the board. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mrs. Amble, you are recognized. Please unmute yourself and begin.
Hi. Hi, I'm not sure if you can see me.
Not at the moment.
Okay, well, you can hear me.
We can.
Hi, this is Susan Amble, 12 Shady Acres Road. I just wanted to support the concerns raised by Tegwin, Violet, Laura, Sarah, and Carl today. And I'd also encourage the Board of Ed to, besides addressing the school start times, also consider commuting times, bus riding times, to promote healthy sleep for our students. In this 13 square mile town, it's alarming that our two high schoolers have to leave home before 6:40 to walk to their bus stop. The average DHS bus route takes 38 minutes. One route lasts over an hour. This board has devoted so many resources to encouraging healthy habits among our kids, and this transportation program threatens to undermine that very good work. I encourage the board to review and optimize the bus routes to effectively delay start times for our kids. Thanks.
Mrs. McGoey, you are recognized. Please unmute yourself and begin.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us tonight. And Julie, on behalf of all of us here in Darien, I want to extend our deepest gratitude for the years of dedicated service on the Board of Education, as well to the many, many years you have been involved with the schools in a multitude of different positions and roles. Your commitment to the well-being of our students, your thoughtful leadership, and your tireless effort have left a lasting impact on our schools and the future of education in Darien. You are an inspiration to everyone sitting at that table and to everyone that knows you. Your voice and vision have helped guide our schools through important decisions and challenges these last 3 years, always with the best interest of our children at our heart, always. You have been a true advocate for their growth and development, and your legacy will continue to shape our district for years to come. As you step away from this role, we can only hope that the person who steps in your shoes will be even half as great as you have been. Your presence will certainly be missed, but your influence will remain strong. We wish you all the best in the future, I certainly do. And I hope that this next chapter brings joy, fulfillment, and well-deserved sense of pride, everything you have accomplished for our schools and our kids, as well as give you lots of free time to spend with your family and your loved ones. We are lucky to have you on the board, and I'm very lucky to call you my friend. You are one of the best. Thank you.
If anybody else online would like to participate, please use the raised hand icon. We have no more raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you everyone for speaking this evening. With that, I will move on to the superintendent's report. Alan.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody who's present and online. And Ms. Bess, if I may say also on behalf of the cabinet, my colleagues and the administration, it's very appropriate that you're seated beside the kids because that's who you've advocated for at the table. So thank you for your civic service. and your advocacy for all students. And if I may say two particular areas, one's already been mentioned tonight, the performing arts and the arts in general. And then a second one, you've been a strong proponent for supporting international travel programs for our kids. So thank you for that, and we'll miss you along the way, but thank you. I don't know if we heard our students will mention, I'm sure, homecoming, and the board chair did. The kids had a great time. If any of you miss going to high school dances, where over 700 kids are, they had a wonderful time. Joining in the Macarena, if you want to take a wee peek, here's a wee peek at Saturday night. Thank you to the high school administration for. It went on.
Oh, wait.
Spot who this is, okay?
That's not easy to do. That's impressive.
Mark's a good sport. Mark, it's always dangerous when you share a video with superintendent. You never know where it goes. Thank you to Mrs. Dunn, who's right beside you, and the members of the administration, not just for that. It's been a real busy weekend for the high school, and they kicked off their NIAS accreditation visit again on Sunday. So on top of everything else, all these celebrations, they're doing the academic part and the preparation of receiving colleagues from across the state who will come to visit the school for Sunday through Wednesday. They're in nearly every classroom, meeting with many staff members, particularly 4 areas they're looking at. That is the inclusiveness of the environment and the continued programming for mental health. They're also looking at the vision of the graduate and how that drives curriculum, but also what are the assessments for vision of the graduate. Then they're looking at the work of the staff around teaching and learning, common planning time, what we do for common assessments for our students, and so on. So those are a couple of areas that they will be looking at over the next couple of days. Well, tomorrow sort of ends it. There will be a wee presentation or a wee comment or two at their faculty meeting tomorrow. And then in a couple of months, we will receive the report back. But again, thank you to the members of the high school administration for all your hard work. And if I may say, point out, Jennifer Record is the chair, I believe. And I think she's the only chair, right? I don't know if she's a co-chair. I don't want to leave somebody out, but Jennifer did an amazing job of organizing this over the last couple of years. And so we shout out to Jennifer for all of her efforts. So far, I've led this off with the last couple of meetings. So far, so good with the cell phones, essentially. We've had 4 violations, if we want a better term, in elementary schools, and about 75 violations, trailblazers at the middle school, right? And that's about 2 a day. That's about 2 a day. So things are going well at this particular point. We have had the second meeting of the advocacy committee for cell phone use and smartwatch use at the high school. So we're following that particular schedule. Parents of Henley and Holmes, I hope you'll join in and have your kids wear pink for Friday. They'll be doing breast cancer awareness recognition. Elementary conferences are on, so thank you to the parents who are here this evening and of elementary schools. Thank you for your participation. It's always nice to welcome you to the schools. Next Monday, we kick off some of our concerts. You may hear about some of those coming up, but we lead off with the Darien High School Orchestra and Chorus. And we have no school on November 5th. Staff here are here for a professional learning for staff. And that concludes my announcements.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Student representative reports, Brenna and Ryan.
Good evening, everyone. So have you heard, HOCO was a fantastic success. Thank you so much to our co-chairs and all the parents and faculty who worked so hard to bring all the school spirit back, and it was so great to see everyone rallying. Additionally, as Dr. Adley mentioned, we have our first set of official concerts with our orchestra performing on the 28th and our chorus performing on the 30th, and best of luck to our juniors who take the PSAT on the 28th as well. We'll have a special schedule for that day. Seniors are coming into that November 1 famed application deadline. Best of luck to everyone. Remember to prioritize well-being and a sense of balance in our lives. And the quarter will be ending shortly as well.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Brennan.
just along with that, many of our fall sports have began their postseason. Hope for the best of them when they compete in the FCIAC and state level.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Approval of the minutes. Oh, before we move on to that, I actually want to have a motion to amend the agenda to add an update on K3 literacy and EduPlanet. As item, it would be 8F after the update on MMS and elementary schedules. It's just a brief update from the curriculum committee. Robin moves, Sarah seconds. All those in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. You're opposed?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, John's opposed. Yep. Okay. Then I'll move on to the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting and regular meeting held on October 8th, 2024, and the minutes of the special meeting held on October 15th, 2024. That's Dennis, seconded by Robin. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay. All right. Board committee reports. Anyone? Julie?
Thank you. Communications Committee met last Friday. There is a memo in our materials tonight regarding a proposal for some website revamping. And the next communications meeting is November 1st. Okay.
And then the Finance Committee met last Thursday. We discussed this year's current fiscal budget, which is back close to even. We have a couple transfers that need approval this evening, that are recommended by the committee. And then we had a discussion talking about projecting future budgets.
Okay.
Briefly.
Sarah.
Curriculum Committee is going to meet virtually only on November 4th because we are not available in this room on because of Election Day setup, but that we will be holding our meeting, but it will be on Zoom.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay. With that, I'll move on to presentations, discussions, and possible action. We have 3 gifts to contemplate tonight. I'll start with discussion and possible acceptance of the contemplated gift for the athletic department. Chris Manfredonia.
Good evening. Tonight you have in front of you a contemplated gift for consideration from Jeff DeGraff in the amount of $2,500. This gift is part of the approved fundraiser the football team held a couple weeks ago, and the team would like to use this money to go towards the payment of food truck they have prior to the Turkey Bowl.
Any questions about that? Okay. With no questions, I'll take a motion to accept the contemplated gift for the Darien High School Athletic Department. Dennis, seconded by Robin. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's okay. That's everyone. And then I'll take nays. That's no one, and abstaining is Sini. Discussion and possible acceptance of contemplated gift for the DHS band program. Ellie.
Hello, I'm here to present a potential donation from a DHS band family who requested to be presented anonymously. The family stated that the DHS band program has had a huge positive impact on their children, and the family is offering a donation of $3,000 to offset the costs of special events and programming for the 2024-2025 school year.
Okay. Any questions about this gift? No? Okay, I'll take a motion to accept the contemplated gift for the Darien High School Band Program. That's Julie, seconded by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. And then thirdly, discussion and possible acceptance of a contemplated gift for the DHS library. Ellen.
Good evening. I will just say that I was not riding the bull, but I was manning the whack-a-mole, which is much more my speed for the HOCO. So we are just really very touched to receive communication from Mr. Donald Gray's family. I was able to find, with the help of the Darien Town Library today, the photo of Donald from his 1952 yearbook. And we can see how many wonderful activities, including NERA, our newspaper, and the yearbook that he was involved in while he was at Darien High School. It is so an honor for us to be offered this generous gift from Carolyn McClear in memory of her father. Mr. Gray grew up in Darien and was a graduate of Darien High School in the class of 1952. He was an avid reader who spent much of his time in the Darien High School library. In his will, Donald left a gift in the amount of $25,000 for the benefit of the DHS library. So our librarians have been working with the family and identifying some of the things that would honor him through this gift, which includes some wonderful books and ebooks and display cases to encourage our students when they pass through the library to pick up something to read, as he did many, many years ago. So we hope that we can accept this gift from the family. They may be listening in from Atlanta right now, so we want to thank them as well.
Absolutely. Any questions about this gift? No? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to accept the contemplated gift for the Darien High School Library. That's Julie, seconded by Dennis. All in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous. And with that, our profound thanks from the board to the DeGraff, the Anonymous Band family, and the Gray and McClear families. We are truly honored to receive these monies and ultimately items from each one of you all. Thank you for your support of our schools and our students. Okay, presentation of student distribution, i.e. class size reports for the high school and Middlesex. Ellen is back with Mark and Kate.
So we will start with the high school, and I'm going to ask that Mark Mazzoni make the presentation of the data as he took on the Herculean task of creating the high school schedule. And so I welcome him and thank him for his tremendous work in this area.
Okay.
If I can start off with a few thank yous. So thank you for the board for having me here tonight. Thank you to Julie for your 3 years of service. I echo all the sentiments shared by everyone tonight. And like you said, don't be a stranger, please, at DHS. And thank you to Dr. Adley for sharing that video of me riding the bull. So now it's accessible forever by anyone. That's great. I thought we were in the circle of trust. You know?
Oh, Mark, you rocked it.
Yeah, thank you. If we could go to the first slide, please. So good news is I can be pretty concise here tonight, just because not a lot of the data has changed from last year. That said, I'll highlight a few of the changes, and please don't hesitate, of course, to ask me questions at the end if you want me to dive deeper into anything that I share. So if we look at the mean class size for disciplines, only history went down by 1 for our academic classes. And then it ticked up last year too. So it kind of came back to equilibrium for us. And then in terms of physical education, academic support, and our arts and our other electives, really only the academic support had a change of note. And that is our reading and study skills class. Last year, we had 1 section of 4 students. And this year with the SRBI team at the middle school, or I guess at the end of last school year, SRBI team at the middle school and the high school got together and really highlighted some students that might benefit from this course that focuses on reading and writing and executive functioning skills. So a lot of our freshmen were offered this course, and parents and students elected in. So we have 3 sections of that running this year that we feel great about. And so that is the big change in terms of academic support. Average caseload, again, largely unchanged from last year. You see the social studies ticked up last year and has come back down to where it's been in years before. This is the first year where our electives all have the exact same at 96, exact same caseload. So again, largely unchanged from last year. Distribution of class size. So last year, 64% of our class sections had 20 students or less. This year, 63% of our class sections have 20 students or less. So again, pretty consistent with the last 4 years or so. Number of small classes under 10. I'm happy to go through each one of these. Of the 22, down one from last year, 13 of those are our lab supports, which you guys are, I know you guys are familiar with, which we intentionally keep at around 8 if we can. They're academic, general education supports, and there are, I'd say, from 4 to 8 students in most of those classes. They're intentionally kept small to provide the support that we need for those students to be successful. If you'd like, at the end, I can go through the other 9 or so. But again, most of those, 5 out of those 9, we intentionally keep smaller just because of the nature of the class and the level of support the teacher needs to provide. We like seeing the zeros on this slide, unchanged from last year. So no class sizes over 25 or more for our 25 or more in our academic classes. Counselor, we had 1,400 students at the time of this report last year. Right now we have 1,386. So the decrease in 2 is just due to the nature of our total amount of students at Darien High School. Summary observations. This slide might look familiar. Not a whole lot of change since last year. Mean class size is largely unchanged. No class size is larger than 24. Same amount of classes that are 10 or under, just about. And Counselor Loge are the same. So very consistent, but if you'd like me to dive into anything, if you have any specific questions, I am happy to answer now.
Okay. We'll open it to board questions. Are there any questions on this report? Katie?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask about, sorry, I just wanted to give you a reference. In table 2, for the mean class sizes, there are 2 line items that have asterisks, but I did not see the asterisks in the presentation. So special education and academic support, could you just add a little color on those line items?
Sure. So the academic support is that reading and study skills class only. And so that's why you see the increase of 11, just because we capped that class at 15 students. We have 3 sections of, I think we have 2 sections of 15 and 1 section of 14 running this year. And then for special education, that takes into account the Learning Center average class size. So the co-taught classes are included in the typical English class. So that first line up there for English and math. So that is the Learning Center average class size.
Sorry, can you just say the last part again?
Sure. The special education line at the bottom is the average of 6 students is for learning centers only. And every other co-taught class is included in that top line in the discipline.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Sarah?
Thanks, Mark. Looking forward, I love seeing that there's more kids taking that academic support class. Do you see that as a trend that is there a potential need for additional staffing for that in the years to come, or what's your thought on
So that's run by Carrie McKay. She also runs our Academic Success Center. And so there's been much more collaboration between the middle school and high school SRBI teams over the last three or 4 years. And we've placed a lot of students previously into Academic Success Center, which largely focuses on just executive functioning skills. So this is actually a credit-bearing elective that students can opt into that addresses a little bit more than just executive functioning in terms of reading and writing vocabulary. So I hope it keeps on growing. I don't have an answer for you right now. I think we've had a lot of positive feedback about the course as it stands right now, but certainly something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. I mean, anecdotally, I think it's been very successful. So I think it's a good one.
Thank you.
What is the enrollment in your academic skills center? Do we know?
In the Academic Success Center?
Excuse me, yes.
So sorry, I didn't mean to. I don't have those numbers for you right now. It fluctuates just because we, with our student intervention team, we invite families in, we invite students in, we talk about how we might support them. And so they'll maybe get some executive functioning help and academic support in that center for 6 weeks or so. We'll come back. If things are looking up, we'll remove them. And we keep on checking in. So it fluctuates throughout the year. So I don't have a number for you right now, but Carrie McKay is very, very busy.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And we have enough capacity there too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We haven't run into a situation where we couldn't provide support where we wanted to.
Dennis?
In our physical education and music, we have 36 classes that are over 24 students. Of those that are over, are those 25 students? Are they, because on the previous slide, you specify your core classes, but not those. So what is the maximum class size and how does that compare to years past?
Great question. So 30 of those are PE or health. And so the max class size is 28 for PE. The max class size for health, we capped at 26. And it's actually better than in years past, where health class sizes have crept up a little bit. But that's done just because of the nature of wanting to give students the opportunity to take the classes they've requested. You know, there's the most amount of flexibility in our PE and health classes just because there's one that's running every single period. And so instead of saying, no, you can't take the class that you really want to take because of class sizes, we say, all right, we'll raise that class size in PE or health a little bit just so you can take APES or IPI or one of the courses that you're passionate about.
Okay. Anyone else? No. All right. Anything else to add?
I just want, again, I could have gone through those 9 courses that are under, but I just want to highlight one. One of those is IPI, and I always make sure to ask Greg Darren what is the most, or one of the most ridiculous projects that the students do in our independent projects in engineering. So this one I have to look down at my notes and read because I couldn't get it right. So we have a student that is building a remote controlled toy car designed to be accessible to those with a disability or limited mobility and bodily function. She designed it with a thought in mind that everyone should be able to have fun. Everything is self-created, including a 3D printed body, the electronics, and Arduino controlled functionality, which she had to code. I'll pause so you guys can Google Arduino. But so some of our smaller class sizes, again, we intentionally keep them small just because the individuality of the course and the expertise that needs to go in.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was wonderful.
And Luca also created a rocket engine. Just put that
Same.
out there too. All right. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Middlesex.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I also want to echo all of the comments to Julie. Thank you for your service to the board. I also want to thank Dr. Caitlin O'Keefe, who is here with me tonight, who was largely responsible for the work of building the Middlesex schedule over the summer, along with our other admin team members who contributed to that work in order to get us to where we are right now. So we have for you, as you know, our averages, the range, and the mode. We included the mode this year for you based on some of the questions around class sizes so that you'd have access to that data, and that is paired with the historical data side by side there. While our mean is slightly increased over last year's reporting data, it does maintain the policy recommendations for class sizes. And it is particularly in our academic content courses where there is that discrepancy between the mode and the mean. I also want to point out for you that PE indicates a range of 30 and that is down to 29. There is some fluidity in our class sizes as student schedules change. On the next slide, you can see the total number of sections that we have, the number of students enrolled, and the distribution by class size, as well as the change from school year 23-24 to school year 24-25. Again, these are somewhat fluid as students' schedules change over the course of the year. Our number of classes under 10 is relatively consistent with last year. However, as has been noted, there's an increase in the number of classes over 24. This reflects both a change in the number of sections. It's a reflection of our enrollment, and it is also a reflection at times of scheduling constraints, including, as Mr. Mazzoni referenced, trying to prioritize student needs and getting them into the classes that they request. Here again, you have that classes under 10 and over 24 with the historical data. As is true with the high school's presentation of the data, the co-taught classes are included in the English and math numbers for you there. And again, reiterating the content on the previous slide that we do have an increase in the classes that are over 24. Our teacher class load average has also increased this year, which is reflecting really the consistent implementation of teachers teaching 5 classes across, so that you have fewer teachers whose average course load or class load is brought down by having 4 class sizes. So it does have some impact from the slight increase in the average class size, but it's more a reflection of the consistent implementation of having 5 classes across. Our counselor caseloads, however, are relatively consistent year over year, where you see some fluctuation that reflects the counselors working with the new cohort of grades. So in sum, our teacher average student caseload has increased with a reduction of 2 teams, most notably in the English, social studies, and science. Our counselor caseloads are more balanced with the incoming 6th grade and are consistent with our previous years. MMS currently offers accelerated world language courses, which accounts for 1 small section in world language and Spanish, and the other small section is Mandarin 6. Our average class sizes remain within the board's class size policy, 65-10, though there is an increase in classes over 24, particularly in English and social studies. While the number of sections of PEs over 24 is greater than last year, it is not inconsistent with prior years. Our quarterlies under 10 were created to accommodate student schedules, specifically math, music, smaller PE sections, and we're working to balance forward for some of those quarters 2, 3, and 4. And our administration is also reviewing our process for building the master schedule for next school year, while also recognizing the impact of the timeline that may have contributed to some of this year's section imbalance. And we'll take discussion.
Okay, what is it before we move? What's a quarterly under 10?
So the quarterlies are in our 7th and 8th grade classes where they have the health, the computer classes, art, and
You mean one of the quarterly
yes,
classes
one of
that
those
is running
quarterlies is
under 10?
Yes, so
Sorry,
we're
I
looking
thought
to
that
see if we
was
can
one thing.
balance those out
Got
forward.
it.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm opening it to questions.
thank you.
I just didn't know what that meant. Okay, I'll ask one. Your last bullet there is reviewing the process for building the master schedule, while also recognizing the impact of last year's timeline on some of this year's section imbalance. Can you walk us through what you mean by that, please?
Yes, and I'm going to elaborate on that in the next presentation as well.
Okay.
So do you mind if I wait until after the
I do
next
not mind.
presentation when we
That's
have a
fine.
little more color on schedule?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
And if I
Julie.
haven't answered it, you can call me back to it.
Okay.
Okay. Julie.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about where the over 24 sized classes tend to fall? We heard in public comment, and it was my guess as well, that the 2 grade levels that have 3 teams versus the 4-team grade level would be most likely to have the larger sections. Is that a fair guess?
I will check my folder of magical resources. I don't think I have the sections printed out with me.
Okay.
I would want to go back and look at our sections in detail before I answer that question.
Okay, I think we'll need to look at that.
Mhm.
I think also it would be helpful if we could look at the data broken out by what's within guideline and what's outside of guideline, which is how we looked at it last year when we were having these discussions, but the data we have for tonight is 10 to 14, 15 to 19. So it's not as easy for us to get a clean read on what is within and what is outside.
Okay, thank you.
of
I
the
apologize. I used
policy.
last year's table and continued building it,
That's
so I'm
quite
sorry
all
if I
right.
didn't have that feedback.
So I think that would be another important follow-up.
Mrs. Bass, essentially the math, English, social studies, they're at 25. I don't believe there's any classes
There's
that are
yeah,
that
nothing
are
over
above.
25.
Sorry, I don't believe that there's any classes above 25 that's outside like music, PE or art.
Correct.
So they're all just either 25.
Okay.
They're no higher than 25.
So to play that out, what I want to understand is of the 9 English sections that have 25 students, so that's 225 middle schoolers who are in English class sections that are outside of our policy guidelines. Are all of those 6th and 7th graders? Is it 225 6th graders? You understand my point. That's what I wanted.
Okay, so just to clarify, you want broken out by grade level, but do you only want the classes that are running above 24?
No, I think we should look at grade level for
All
the
grade
class
level.
size breakout across
Got
the
it.
board.
Okay. Katie?
Thank you. The middle school data did not include any information on special education. Can you provide that data?
I don't have it with me at this time. We provided the same data as was provided last year, and our co-taught numbers are in the discipline numbers the same way they are for the high school. Can you clarify which specific data you'd like so I can come back with it?
Well, so the high school presented their learning center,
centers.
so it would be, resource
Sure.
for middle school. And I think just that consideration of the other programs would be helpful. And then following up to that, I'm also curious how what the impact has been on the SES department at the middle school with the classrooms, with the class sizes growing. Understanding that, there are maximum percentages of, how many students with IEPs can be in a class before it becomes a requirement. I'm just curious as to where we might be pushing thresholds and changing, kind of the demographics within those classes.
John?
Can I just clarify,
Yeah,
Mrs. Klein?
sure.
Mrs. Klein, can I just clarify, are we in compliance with the ratio?
We'll work with Kate to go over that, but we have one class in 8th grade math that's one student over currently. And we're working on scheduling options.
John?
So when we went through the budget exercise and worked with a consultant, I think we were assured that, we'd stay relatively within guidelines. But when you look at this 29 number relative to the past, it's been a pretty significant jump. So I'm trying to figure out what happened here, just to put it blatantly.
So I would say to you that, well, again, you're going into the next presentation, but that's fine.
I can wait for that.
No,
if
it's
you
fine.
want.
It's fine. The result of the scheduling process is well within the spirit of what we said we would do and well within what we expected the consultants to do. We asked the consultants to work within our guidelines. It is within our guidelines. We just had a high school report that for the last number of years, maybe the last 2 years exception, there's classes over 25, right? We don't have any classes other than some of the ensembles and PE. But we don't have any classes over. So I would say to you that we're not outside the guidelines. What we projected during the budget process, three of those averages, the English, the science, and the world language, actually comes in lower than it was back in FY20. I will say this though, just in general, there's a couple of areas where we could do a little bit better and balance in the classes. I recognize that through the process. But I would say clearly that we met the objective. Let's be honest, the objective was to reduce through 10 FTEs for the elementary school and middle school at a savings of $1.24 million at a cost of $100,000 with the consultant. I think we did that. Their charge was to maintain within the guidelines to make sure that there was the team remained in place. Make sure that for elementary that we have the transition and itinerant teachers that worked out. Make sure that we have professional development for our staff, our administrators around scheduling. And I would say another thing is that that was a recommendation for us is to drive some of that at even central office level with our administrators in the actual buildings for the schedules. So that's another recommendation that we take away. So I don't think I don't think the results of this are outside the spirit of it. And I'll say that, like, I'll just be honest. Yes, every student matters, right, in the sense of the class, but adding one student to 24 to 25 is not going to make a huge difference. I'm just being honest. I don't believe you've compromised the education of our kids by the result of this, what has actually transpired. There's areas of improvement. I recognize that, but I think we're being compliant and it's been responsive.
The only component in terms of what the goals were is we were also finishing implementation of a previously agreed to contract that we hadn't fulfilled. So I think that was also an important component. We had a number of teachers teaching 5 and a number of teachers teaching 4, but the agreement with the union was that all would teach 5. So that, I just think that was an important component.
That's true. We still have 2 teachers that through attrition for the 3, 4 to 5 that we need to still realize too.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
Was that contract that all of the teachers will teach 5 or that they may teach 5?
Well, the intent was for teachers to teach the 5 classes.
Yeah, one way or another.
I don't have the exact word in front of me, but the intention was for the teachers.
Just think from a contractual obligation that could be a significant.
Robin?
I mean, I just want to kind of go back to John's point because first, a couple of questions. First of all, when we had the budget discussion, the consultant study, it was my understanding that it was basically presented as potentially a reduction of 1 team. So I was a little surprised that I saw 2 teams being reduced here. And I don't know if that just had to do with the numbers of each grade and how it worked out, but that was just one question. And then I understand that the average is within the class size, but having 29 classes with over 24 students compared to the prior 6 or 7 years where we only had maybe 2 or 3, the way that this was presented to us by the consultant, I think all of us had an understanding that we would be much, much closer to our prior years, kind of within the spirit of what the class guidelines are. And my question would be, what are we planning to do to try to improve this, just to make sure that our students are not being impacted in a detrimental way and that they are getting the learning that they need, especially in the entry grade, like 6th grade, 7th grade, where this is most likely, I think, happening.
So I think the answer to that would be one of the things, and Kate was deferring the comment to the next part of the presentation. But one of the impacts, it wasn't a complete impact, but one of the impacts was the lateness of the actual setting of the settings sections. Also, how do we impact? Because we were still having those discussions, how many teachers were going to be in place or not in place right through May. So that had an impact. We also had a transition in a middle school principal during that particular process. I would say that 2 of the things that would happen is that the middle school would do the schedule as a team, but they would also do it in collaboration with the support from central services staff, team from central services. I think the close monitoring of balance in those sections and setting the sections are right out the bat to cover the actual classes, but you may say like, surely you would get that right. Well, just the monitoring of that and the implementation of that would be a collaborative effort between the middle school and central services administration. Those are a couple of things that are going to be in place for next year.
Okay. Thank you.
And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So let's stay on class size focus and
If I
questions
may.
about scheduling. Yes, Dave, go ahead.
Sorry, I had my hand up. I don't know if you can see it. My apologies. Speaking to the second slide in the MMS presentation regarding class sizes with the range and the mode and the averages, I appreciate this brevity actually for a board presentation and speaking to. So I think that's fantastic. However, is it possible to give us the drill down class by class information that populated this chart?
Yes, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
Yes, they'll provide it.
Yes.
Okay, and I probably had some more comments piggybacking on John, but I think I'll wait till we get there in the deck.
Okay. Julie, did you have something on this?
I did. I had one more question on the class sizes specifically. I have plenty of comments and questions after we've gone through the rest of the presentation for that discussion. But I did just want to ask also, I would love to understand how many of our classes that are in the 20 to 24 range are at 24. Because I get the feeling that we're really, really up against the ceiling here. And I think it's important that we understand that. If that's in here and I missed it, I'm sorry. But if it's not, I think that would be helpful information.
So if we get the base data, I think that will show us, right? Dave's drilled down class by class. Is that?
Well, I don't know that it'll show us specifically how many of them have 24 kids.
Class by class, the enrollment.
Okay, so okay.
Yes.
Literally class by class. Thank you. That's what I asked for originally. And if I could just add something on the question about the late decision on doing this, I can't help but push back a little bit and say we were begging for schedules. We asked week after week after week, show us how this is going to work. And we were told that it couldn't be done yet, that it wasn't time, that the work hadn't been done, it wasn't ready. So I'm not carrying that one forward, and I don't think the rest of this board should either.
All I'm saying is that the class sizes sections could not have been set until we actually decided how many teachers we were. That's all. I'm not making any other case other than that.
Okay, Dave.
Follow up to that, Alan, you mentioned the May date. Do we normally have the scheduling finished by May every year in advance?
Well, I'll let the people who do the schedule, but in general, we're supposed to finish in yes.
In May every year, it's not an August or July.
No, it wouldn't stop things happening. The schedule's not necessarily published all the time, in early summer, but generally you would want it ready, yes.
What is the
It's a
timeline
spring activity.
that you typically use to set the schedule?
So historically, the middle school was able to complete its schedule prior to the end of the school year for the last few years since the 21-22 school year, as far as I understand it. That has continued over the summer, but the amount of schedule that was done prior to the end of the school year was significantly greater than that which was done by the end of the school year this year.
More work was done in the summer this year than historically.
Significantly more.
Okay. All right, let's move on to update on elementary.
Jill, I just have
and
one quick question.
Yeah.
On this data, the six music classes that are greater than 24, do you know what those are? Are they music? Are they chorus? Do you know?
Chorus and band.
Chorus and band. Thank you.
And I would just add to that my understanding, and Colleen Thompson is here if she'd like to clarify if I'm incorrect, is that for our ensemble teachers, the larger class size is not necessarily a bad thing, because when you have more people representing the different parts in the ensemble, you get a better blend.
Right.
And more similarity to what a full ensemble rehearsal would sound like. So
That was the point of my question, to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Katie.
Thank you. I wanted to just clarify and ask about the small class sizes. So, my recollection from the budget discussion last year and the driver of this was that we had some very small class sizes that were outside the low end significantly of the policy, and that we were trying to better adhere to our policy guidelines. And while there's huge numbers of classes that jumped over, it also appears to me that we have more classes. I just want to make sure that I'm reading this correctly and I'm not mistaken that last year we had 15 small class sizes, and that this year we have 16.
you're reading that correctly, and noting that most of those are within that elective as opposed to within the core academic classes at the top.
Well, that's true for the small, but it's
for the
quite the opposite for the big. So
Yes.
I guess my question is, I'm not sure, the two presentations that seem very enmeshed, maybe this is segging in, but I'm curious what the consultant's role was that we paid, handsomely, how we wound up with something that took us in the wrong direction, both for two small classes and two big classes. I really am struggling with how we got to this situation. So if that's a scheduling question, I hope to find some answers.
I think the honest answer to that, Ms. Dublin, is that I think collectively we could do a better job at massaging that and looking at the numbers and schedule. The consultant worked with our administration on how to schedule, what to schedule, but it's up to us collectively to actually execute on that. And I think that's an area where we could do a better job of sort of smoothing out the sections and so on. I'd recognize that.
Let's move on to the update on elementary and MMS schedules and take any more. We can do class
No,
size
I just
questions.
saw Mr. Brown's hand
Oh,
raised and I didn't want to
okay.
cut him off.
Oh, all good. I was just following up on Katie's question. You know, Alan, I guess, you know, there's always room for improvement. But when we had these discussions that John had mentioned, I mean, you told us we had to trust you on this. You guys had it. And to Katie's point, we went the wrong way. So from a high level, can you talk to that?
I would just respectfully disagree. I think that
we went the right way.
Well, on any given, but if you're talking about the increase in the small number of sections, any one particular thing you could focus on. I'm not saying I was the first to say that we could do a better job in some areas, but in the spirit of what we were trying to do by reducing 8 or 10 staff members, right, and to realize the savings that we had to realize, I think we have accomplished and maintained the team scheduling, the fundamental programming in place. I don't believe we've jeopardized the kids' programming. I honestly don't believe that. Is it ideal? No. Living with one class over, I think we could reduce the number of classes clearly that were one student over.
Yeah,
but I believe we did deliver on it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the detail to go into that, you know, before I go any further. But at a high level, we knew this was coming late. We knew we were in the budget process. We mentioned several times, are you okay with these changes? You said we had to trust you. So I'll see what the data has once we see that. Thank you.
Some of the lateness though, Dave, if I'm not mistaken, is the timing of the budget process. Is that correct?
Yes, and the contemporaneous conversations then were that despite the delay, we would be all on top of this. So.
Okay. All right, let's move on to update on elementary and MMS schedules. Understanding we can't completely separate out these two discussions.
We're a third later now. Budget process.
Okay, yep, absolutely. These are connected conversations. So for this evening's discussion, we'll have Mrs. Joller give some color to the elementary modifications and also Mrs. Thompson to speak particularly about the fine arts. And Mrs. Demoulas will be back up at the podium as well. So we'll talk about the specific scope of the work and the outcomes, mostly the elementary schedule. Who was driving? I'm sorry. You can go back. Yes. Thank you. That's okay. You can see there we're going to largely talk about the impact of the elementary, impact at MMS, and then going forward next. Okay, scope of the work. So as has been previously mentioned, we were trying to find efficiencies in staffing while maintaining class sizes. We were also looking to try to build internal capacity for the scheduling work. We're looking to revise the elementary schedules, utilizing the staff more efficiently across the 5 elementary schools and maintaining the team model at MMS. The outcomes, we did maintain the instructional minutes for the programming. We've maintained mean class sizes within the board guidelines, implemented coordination of assignments with shared staff, and maintained access to student programming. Most of this was already mentioned. One thing we want to clarify is when we're talking about schedule, it's really important to talk about the schedule and look at it in 3 different ways. The bell schedule or rotational schedule is kind of like when the classes start and stop. That seems to always be much more clear at the middle school level because there's actually a bell, kids get up and move. That's less clear at the elementary schedule because for the most part, that type of bell schedule is really driven by the specialist classes and when the children leave to go to a specialist class or to leave for lunch, when they actually leave their classroom. We also want to take a look at typically a student schedule. So it's the student facing experience of the schedule and then also the teacher view schedule as it's called. And then the master schedule is largely what is kind of the highlight of the entire schedule for the entire school. At the middle school, it would be classes, sections, grade levels, teams. And at the elementary, it would be primarily the special schedules across the offerings. Okay.
So good evening, everybody. And Julie, just to echo everybody's gratitude, it's been a pleasure and thank you for your service. Beginning with elementary, we were able to achieve efficiencies in the way we shared our itinerant art, music, and PE staff. So we were able to realize reductions of 0.8 FTE in art, 1 FTE in general music, and 0.4 PE teachers. The strategy that we use when we work with the consultant, and when I say we, it's our building administrators, our assistant principals and principals, we incorporated 8 blocks per day, including 1 prep period and a 30-minute common lunch, which our special area teachers did not have in our previous schedules. So that allows for 7 instructional periods throughout the school day. And one of the big advantages of our schedule is consistent grade level PLC time, which allowed for district curriculum grade level meeting times. So each grade level has 3 common professional learning opportunities during their PLC. So that's been an advantage for us.
Hello there. I can give some details on the elementary music piece of this. So as a result of our work over the summer with the consultant, we were able to maintain our general music and instrumental music classes being taught by content area specialists. So all of our vocal music specialists are teaching general music and chorus, and all of our instrumental music specialists are teaching band and strings. We decided to move the instrumental music from a 5-day schedule to a 6-day letter day schedule to better coordinate with the general music classes. Previous to this year, instrumental lessons were scheduled by day of the week, while the other special areas were scheduled on the A through F day letter rotation. The biggest factor in moving the instrumental schedule to the 6-day rotation is space. Each school only has 1 general music room and 1 instrumental room. So having the schedules aligned meant that we could schedule 2 music classes to run at the same time by using the instrumental room as a second general music space on letter days when band and orchestra weren't meeting. This was especially helpful at Ox Ridge because due to the increased enrollment there, we needed to use the additional music space to prevent the general music teachers from having to push into classrooms when there wasn't space available, which would have happened if we didn't align the instrumental and general music schedules. Another factor influencing the move to instrumental music on a 6-day rotation was the opportunity to add full band and orchestra rehearsals to the school day during what we now call WIN block, What I Need. You may know that as DI block. It's the same block. It's just been renamed based on a lot of the work that we did over the summer. This was responsive to some tri-state feedback we received that only holding these rehearsals before and after school could limit access for students who don't have transportation. We still are holding some rehearsals before and after school to make sure students are fully prepared for concerts and as a supplement to the WIN block rehearsals. In terms of elementary art and ELP, elementary art has been scheduled using itinerant staff between elementary schools and 1 teacher who is shared between DHS and Holmes. We now have visual art scheduled for ELP once per rotation. This is also responsive to tri-state feedback, as they noted that since we offer ELP music, it would be great for our early learners if we could also offer visual art. And we now have a full program of specials for ELP, including music, art, PE, and library. So going forward, we are going to continue to evaluate the effectiveness of these changes, and these bullets represent the focused areas for our continued consideration. We need to continue to look at the benefits and challenges of instrumental music on a 6-day rotation. We recognize that that's a big change. I'm an elementary instrumental parent myself, and so I know how different it is knowing that my child was supposed to bring his cello on Thursday and now he needs to bring his cello on D-Day. So that's been a heavy lift organizationally for parents, students, and classroom teachers. And so we're continuing to let that play out and to see if with more time and with continuing the great communication our music teachers are doing, if those problems will lessen over time and it'll become a little easier for our classroom teachers, our parents, and our students to follow the schedule. So the other trade-off is that on the one hand, there are fewer meeting times for lessons as they were previously once every 5 days, but now they're once every 6 days. But on the other hand, putting more full group rehearsals during the school day grants better access for students as they have the opportunity to have both their lesson and their band or orchestra rehearsal during the school day rather than before or after school. Access is a big issue, and I'm going to continue to monitor. There should be no students in our district who are denied access or have reduced access to instrumental music programming due to any services that they receive or any other classes. And so I'm going to continue to be responsive to anything that I hear. I'm not aware of any students who are being denied access or have limited access to elementary instrumental music due to this change. But we're going to continue to monitor it. If the new schedule seems to be negatively affecting students' preparation for concerts or their progress on their instrument, we will most certainly work to find a different solution. Sorry, that was a big explanation for one bullet, but I'll be more brief. We're going to continue to work on our scheduling practices for art. This is our first year utilizing itinerants, and we'll reflect on the effectiveness of the splits and teacher assignments. When you have itinerant teachers, it also presents an opportunity to examine how well aligned our practices are, as we've been doing in music. So this will be a focus of our curriculum development and revision work moving forward. One thing we can look at is our scheduling practices for ELP. We may consider moving ELP to a letter day, A through F, to better align with our specials teacher schedules. This will just ease scheduling. And we're also going to look at a big picture consideration is now that we're increasing itinerant teaching assignments, we could consider looking at the pre-K through 12 schedule holistically to better align schedules between buildings and levels. For example, we currently can't share staff between elementary and middle school or between middle school and high school because the master schedules don't align. So when the elementary is running an A through F day schedule, middle school is running a day of the week with rotation, high school is running A through H day with a rotating block schedule. The teachers in my departments, particularly music and art, are certified pre-K through 12. And there are teachers in the department who would do a really good job teaching classes at both levels. Better alignment of schedules between levels would also be more efficient from a scheduling and budgeting standpoint as we could better accommodate shared staffing. So I really think this is something we could look at if we have more opportunities to work on scheduling.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Can we do elementary questions before we move on to?
Sure. Okay, we'll start with elementary questions, Julie and Colleen. Sarah, did you have one?
I did. The itinerant art teachers, how do the travel time in between schools, how is that built in? Is that a period? Is that during their lunchtime? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, we were able to factor in, so all of the teachers are getting their full 45-minute prep and full 30-minute lunch in addition to travel time.
Okay.
And they're also, if they're traveling during the day, they're logging mileage. So that's been factored in, and we've done many tweaks to make sure that we're doing that correctly.
And do the children have is this the same art teacher all the time, or they're not? How does that work?
So art is scheduled once every 6 days, and there's also a rotational art schedule. It's been brought to my attention now that I'm in the role that there's been some discrepancies in the past as to whether rotational art was always scheduled with the same teacher or whether it's scheduled with a different teacher, even in terms of whether it's called rotational art or whether it's called extra art or whether it's called bonus art. So in terms of curriculum development that I talked about and working on schedules that match curriculum, those are the things that I'm really interested in working on and recommending best practices.
So do you think best practice is having the same teacher for all of your time, or is it better to have a mix?
I think if the goal of rotational art is to be an extension of the curriculum, meaning that the students are working on the same knowledge and skills, then it's definitely important that they have the same teacher. If the goal of rotational art is to be additional extra enrichment time, then that is a different thing. So I think it'll depend on how we move forward, and depending on our work, we'll make that recommendation.
Julie?
So to follow up on that.
Sure.
Am I hearing that presently they have different teachers?
Yes, in several schools, they have a different teacher for extra art than they have for their daily art class.
So if I'm in third grade,
Yes.
what do I perceive extra art to be versus normal art?
I would say it depends, and that would have been the answer in previous school years, is my understanding. I think that's an area of focus in the future to define what that time is and define what that time has been, is, and should be.
I appreciate that, Colleen, but I can't understand what you're saying. So what is rotational art currently? Does it differ by building? What is it, just completely undefined? What are you talking about?
Sure. So every student has, they have one period per week of art, and that's their regularly assigned art class that never changes. There is a practice called rotational art scheduling, where students might have an extra 1 to 2 art classes per month that are scheduled on a rotational basis. So in some schools, that has been scheduled by the assistant principal on a regular schedule, and that's been considered an extension of the curriculum. In other schools, that's been scheduled in different ways, maybe by sign up through the teacher. And so those instructional minutes have been realized in different ways. And I'm certainly interested in continuing to examine that practice so that it's consistent across the schools. And now that we are utilizing itinerants, I think that will be the goal moving forward.
Thank you.
Sure.
Katie?
Yeah, this has become a cloudy issue. I'm having trouble reconciling how this could have possibly occurred in the past when we have always had dedicated art teachers at the building. And with one dedicated teacher for each building, I certainly don't remember my kids having rotational art. I don't remember them having different art teachers unless it was something very typical, like a sub. So I'm wondering if this one, like rotational art scheduling sounds new this year. Two, is that, I'm sorry?
It's actually not new. It's not new.
Okay, well, I guess I'd love to see a past schedule of that
Sure.
because I certainly haven't
Yeah.
heard of it. But then my question is it now happening in response to this change? And it seems to me that, well, it must be because we have our itinerant teachers and we don't have consistency across our building. So I guess what I'm really getting at is, the presentation didn't have really much color at all on art. And that was something that was discussed at length at this table and really at length by the public about how much it's valued and how much what happens in elementary school leads to the incredibly robust curriculum that's offered at the high school. So I have concerns that we're struggling to provide what we said we could. I mean, honestly, even this conversation is quite confusing.
Sure.
I'm the only one who's experienced rotational art before. So there were a few itinerant teachers even prior to this year because of the size of Royal compared to the size of Oxbridge. So in the schools where there was an itinerant teacher, it was not always consistent that the core art class and the rotational art class was taught by the same teacher. Was it exacerbated with more itinerant teachers? Yes. But I think that with Colleen looking at it, that we can minimize that, but it did happen in the past.
So just to follow up and to make sure we're on the same page, my question then is rotational art the same at all of the buildings now? And if it did exist in years prior to this, were those students getting the same experience, you know, at a school that had an itinerant teacher versus the ones that didn't? So really my question is, how is this impacting student programming? Are the kids getting what they need? Are they getting consistency? And
I think that with a consistent administrator, K-12 overlooking the program, that students will now have a consistent experience. I don't know that it was consistent prior to this.
I think probably not tonight, but it would probably be helpful for us to have a more complete explanation of what rotational art is. It does sound like it varies somewhat by building. So maybe what are the different models that are in place? How is this, does this relate to delivery of our core curriculum?
Sure.
If you guys would mind providing that as a backup. And then we can take it up as an agenda item if we feel we need further clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill, do you want that as a whole board or do you want us to take it up in curriculum?
Let's get the memo to everyone and then, but yes, you would take it up. It's a good point. You would take it up in curriculum. Okay. Okay, who else? What's your name? Dennis. Sorry.
The benefits and challenges of instrumental music on a 6-day rotation. You mentioned just the difficulties of just organization part. But I guess my question is, and it's something that I'm sitting here thinking we may have missed on the board, is how do we judge success or failure of this program metrics wise? And how do we look at, our kid, just doing simple math on a 6-day schedule, that's 30 times meeting versus 180 days, every 5 days is 35 days. So now they're missing 5 times 45, and Julie did her math quickly, and I can't do it as quickly. But what impact is that going to have over them over 1, 3, 7 years? And what will that do to our arts courses?
As you might imagine, I'm very interested in making sure that our music and art programs stay robust and strong. So I'll be collecting those, the types of data and the types of metrics that we can use would be, I would say, progression through the method book, right? So we're keeping track of that. And performance, we have the opportunity to present ourselves publicly. And so, students' preparation for performances, the quality of music that they're able to play, and their progression through method books. Those are certainly things that we're looking at. I researched several programs in the area to come up with some ideas of how to schedule based on the factors that I mentioned, and, advocated a few things to building principals, to central office. And we all, looked at this program, and we wanted to give the scheduling method a try. But there certainly are metrics, and, I'm certainly not going to wait 3, 5, 7 years to find out whether or not things are progressing well.
If I can just add one follow-up, you'll often hear me talk about the connection between instruction, curriculum, and instruction. And this is a case with the rotational art. We can expand upon this in the memo, where we would like to see the instructional minutes and the program aligned to how the actual core curriculum is developed. So that's something that we can definitely improve. And one of the pieces that we also have to be thinking about is, what are the overall instructional minutes of the elementary schedule? Right? Because minutes with art connect to minutes for literacy, connect to minutes for mathematics. So I would say that our look moving forward will be not only with just the art program, but the holistic schedule of what happens, and especially at the given different grade levels, K2 all the way up through 3-5, that should look slightly different. So the board can expect that we would be coming back with more information beyond just the art piece.
Okay. When you say we will be coming back with more information, what exactly do you mean? Do we have something currently scheduled that you're referring to, or is there a timeline of what you're talking about?
We don't have something on the schedule right now, but I would suggest as we move forward with the literacy conversation and we think about literacy programming, all of that connects, right? Because we have to think about the instructional minutes for literacy. Will those change? How might that impact what happens with art? How might that impact what happens with science? Or we have to think about the whole schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I
Right.
mean.
So we are probably, okay, talking about November, December, or really December at this point.
For the instructional minutes for literacy. And then I think
Yes.
there's a bigger conversation around, again, we have play-based learning at the elementary
Yes.
level. So I think that there are some inconsistencies across the 5 schools and across the different grade levels within the 5 schools.
Okay.
We're looking to make that more consistent.
All right, thank you. Dennis and then Julie.
So with a follow-up to that question, Colleen, is, and to use a pun is, so what will our drumbeat be to you to come back to us with reports of metrics and things like that? Or, because that is not on our master schedule, and I think we need to be appraised of the success or I don't want to say failure, but maybe detriment challenges that we may be experiencing.
I mean, that's certainly going to be part of my work with the department. As Amy said, curriculum and instruction and instructional minutes are really closely related. This year on the docket for curriculum revision and development is grade 3 orchestra and grade 4 band, which is kind of the perfect time to be looking at these things and, looking at what we might expect and what we're experiencing, and to make decisions based on what we are doing with the curriculum and the instruction and the instructional minutes moving forward. So, this is something that we're probably be looking at closely during our January and February PD days. So I would say I'll have a lot better information. We've only been running our instrumental program for about a month now. It starts at the end of September. So once we work out these kind of logistical kinks of making sure students are remembering instruments and we're working out the schedule logistically, I'll be keeping a close eye on instruction and performance.
Yeah, but sorry, but that's kind of my concern, is that if we have a challenge and we're not going to determine this until February, we're already halfway through budget season, if not done, because we vote February 14th normally. So we've missed a year. So, but just a point. So.
You mean in terms of assessing the efficacy of what we're currently doing? Do we have any serious concerns at this stage with delivery?
Again, I don't have any serious concerns, no. Are the bullets that I presented in terms of assessing the benefits and challenges, that's legitimately where we are.
Okay.
Assessing the benefits and challenges, but
Okay.
that's
Fair enough.
that's
So it
what we're
sounds
doing.
like in terms of excuse me for interrupting you. In terms of next steps, we're going to hear more about, from the art perspective, the rotational schedule. We'll hear more from an overall perspective about elementary minutes that will include art and music. And then I think at some point that's appropriate, I guess after your PD days, we'd like to hear some high level efficacy, with the understanding that if we have to pivot, which we've always said, we could end up pivoting late, but hopefully we won't have to.
Okay.
Okay, Julie.
Thank you. 3 quick things. First, the piece on rotational art, when that memo comes back, if there could be an explanation of why art has rotational, and please don't rock my world and tell me that other subjects have rotational something that I've never heard of before. So why only art?
Sure.
Second question is, can I get a yes or no answer? Are students getting the same amount of instructional minutes in music and art? When I say music, I mean both strings, band, and general music that they used to, even when we factor in having ensemble practices during the day. Do the numbers come together across the year, or they do not?
It's pretty close. I would have to, kind of, there's not a clear cut,
Okay.
definitely yes or definitely. It's not definitely no. We're pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then my third point is the last bullet on this going forward slide is absolutely ginormous. And I just want to point that out, and we can come back to discuss that when we've looked at the rest of the middle school presentation, because we have a lot of really, really big things on the list of what to look at next.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you both.
Sure.
Julie, I just giggled because if you thought those were a lot, wait until you get to my last slide.
Oh, I've seen
All
it.
right, here we go. Ready? Okay, so I wanted to start with a little reminder that the MMS has an 8-period day with a 5-day rotation. Neither of those things changed as a result of the work with the scheduling consultant, but I thought it was a useful framework when we're thinking about how our teacher schedules are implemented at the middle school. As was referenced at the beginning with the scope of the work, a priority in the implementation this year was to have all teachers teaching except for their prep and their lunch period. I do want to distinguish that in the past, when teachers were teaching 4, they weren't doing nothing. Many of them were serving other roles in the building. The change this year is to those 5 classes consistently across the board. So when we think about a teacher being fully scheduled at MMS this year, they are either generally serving 5 classes and a duty, or they have 5 classes and their daily team meeting. For the teachers who are not scheduled with 5 classes this year, we have them either providing targeted interventions to students, performing additional duties within the building, or meeting coverage needs within the building when they do arise. And we're going to elaborate on those bullet points as we go forward. And I want to apologize because you'll notice there's a clerical error in the materials you initially got and what is posted on the board right now. You can see here the total number of teachers who by discipline have 5 classes or fewer than 5 classes. I will note that the world language change there with the 3 to 4 reflects one of those small class sizes that you saw in the class size report. Our MMS Spanish 3 class is a class found intervention. Otherwise, you can see that in social studies and science, all of our teachers have been scheduled with 5 classes. In English, we are close to having all of our teachers scheduled with 5 classes. And in math and world language, there is still opportunity to consider whether or not we could get our teachers up to 5 classes as we look at the information forward. So those teachers who are not currently teaching 5 classes are predominantly either serving in interventions for our students, which are expanded this year, and I'll elaborate on that, or they are serving in study halls. Past practice for interventions at MMS, we had 2.0 full-time interventionists in the building, as well as a robust MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support program, which you've also heard referred to as SRBI and SRBIB. Both of those things are still in place this year at MMS. And additionally, we're able to offer numeracy intervention and literacy intervention to students. Those are newly developed this year and are being implemented based on the examination of smarter balanced assessment data, as well as teacher recommendation and consideration of student work samples through our MTSS process. We are also running a section with a Spanish intervention where we have a teacher who is pushing into Spanish classes to provide additional support. And then we have 2 sections or 0.4 FTE allocated to multilingual language learner intervention, which is designed based on specific student needs this year in the building. It is worth noting that increasing the number of teachers at 5 classes or reducing the total FTE would result in the reduction of these available interventions. So these are here because of the available FTE that we have. I would also note that the master schedule for this year, when we say master schedule, we mean what classes are running when in that rotation. That was built prior to the interventions being designed. So that is something that we might look at being able to do differently next year once we have, now that we know what these interventions are looking like and how we're utilizing them. Sorry, I confiscated a phone. Sorry. It's a phone a friend. It's not mine. Study halls, past practice for study halls with those teachers who were teaching 4 in the past 3/4 of the year, they were serving in a study hall. Another quarter of the year, they were supporting the cafeteria. That did allow for some of our students to be able to access content area or grade level teachers for extra help during the study hall. This year, our study halls are staffed by our unified arts teachers, world language teachers, and our school counselors. And as we noted, there are 5 world language teachers who have study hall in lieu of their 5th class. So they are serving in 2 study halls, 2 periods of study hall during the day. Study hall runs at MMS opposite lunch because of the capacity historically to accommodate a full grade level at one time in the cafeteria. So when students are not at lunch, they are in either study hall, sometimes they are receiving special education services. They have the option to go to recess, and sometimes they have flexible music lesson makeups. I also would add that while our study hall teachers our study halls are no longer being staffed by those content area grade level teachers, our students do still have access to those teachers during the flex program on the daily basis. Team model. So we've preserved the team model with a reduction in teams, having 3 teams in the 6th grade, 3 teams in the 7th grade, and 4 teams in the 8th grade. And those teams were allocated based on the class sizes. I want to explain carefully the table on the right because I don't think it's intuitive. This says the total number of times that a student is in a class that is not on their team. If we take that total number of times, where do those classes fall? And as you can see, the vast majority of those are in math. That does include our 9 sections of double accelerated math. Those classes are entirely Rainbow by design. We also have other math classes where students are off team. We do have an increase over last year in the number of sections of students who are in Rainbow classes, and we look at that whether there's one student who's off team or more than one student. Many of the reasons that a student would be off team or Rainbow are consistent with previous year's practice. In addition to those math drivers that I indicated, we prioritize fitting the world language choice, typically French or Mandarin. Those run fewer sections than our Spanish. And so if a student has the desire to have a French class or Mandarin class, that might contribute to them not being in a team class somewhere else in their schedule. Similarly, getting in a first music choice, most frequently orchestra, again, because that is our music program with the fewest number of sections. That could result in a student being placed off schedule from time to time. There's a case where we prioritize a special education service, which might result in having a student who is off team in another class. We also consider other individual student needs that aren't captured by that. Some of those are social, for example. We have the need to hand schedule students from time to time, and that increased this summer given the implementation of the schedule build. And there are also, particularly this year, times where all of A-team classes were filled during the students' available period. So we did note that the work of the schedule that is typically done from approximately February through either the end of the school year or into the summer was largely compressed into that timeline this year, which did result in an increased need to hand schedule students this summer. Physical education, where we had a 1.0 reduction. In the 23-24 school year, all of our PE teachers had 25 periods of instruction. That's equivalent to 5 days a week, with classes meeting 5 times a week, even though our PE classes are scheduled to either be twice a week or 3 times a week. So that's why we look at the section numbers when we're talking about our fully scheduled PE. This year, with that reduction, we have 1 teacher who has 25 periods and 4 teachers with 26 periods. So they do have a slight increase in the number of periods that they are teaching. While the range of class sizes is generally consistent with previous years, as you noted in the previous presentation, there is an increase in sections over 24, which is a result of the fewer total sections that are being run this year. One of the ways we're thinking about ameliorating that next year or mitigating that next year is to look at increasing the total number of PE sections while reducing the duties that our PE teachers serve. I have to say the PE teachers have gone really above in some ways in their duties by coming in before school at 7:20, and they have been supervising our students as they arrive at school, which is different from the types of duties that their colleagues serve. So we're exploring other ways to continue to serve that very important purpose for chaperoning our students before school, which would allow us to schedule our PE teachers potentially for additional sections. I also do, though, need a caveat that the PE sections and the music sections really run in tandem in a sense, because when a student is not in PE, they are in music. in a given period. So we can't just increase PE without also increasing music. And given what we said earlier about the class size benefit in some cases of larger music classes, that is something that we need to do. Music ensembles, excuse me, that is something that would need to be done thoughtfully with Colleen. Speaking of music, all of our music students are scheduled into the first choice music class they shared with us during our class request season, band, chorus, music explorations, or orchestra. Our students in band and orchestra continue to have one pull-out lesson per week in addition to their regularly scheduled band or orchestra class. We also have rotational lessons, which are scheduled to minimize interference with academics, and there's flexibilities for makeup lessons during flex as well as study hall. We do have a 6th grade chorus teacher who is traveling to Oxbridge to pick up the ELP sections, but that has not impacted the chorus scheduling at MMS. Okay, going forward. We're looking to refine our process and further our capacity for the master schedule development using district technology. I'm going to unpack that for you. Schedule is built first with identifying the number of students who request or are recommended for each class. From there, you look at your available FTE and decide how many sections of each of these classes am I going to run. With that information, the master schedule is then built. That means when are each of these class periods going to take place so that each teacher has the right number of classes every day. And once that master schedule is available, then you start putting kids onto that schedule. At that point, you might discover, oh, I actually need a PE class this period, which means I need to close that PE class, or, oh, we really need an English class over here, so I have to close this English class, or, oh my gosh, there's not enough electives period 4 for my 8th graders, etc. Those are the kinds of challenges in building the master schedule. Past practice at MMS has largely been to do that master schedule work by hand and to utilize spreadsheets. One of the areas that we are looking at trying to do differently this year is to utilize the capabilities that Aspen has to support us in designing the master schedule, for it to look for what is the most effective time for these different classes to run, given all of the constraints. It is our understanding that Aspen has the capability to do some work with teaming, and that will be one of the areas for professional development that our team is going to participate, our administrative team is going to participate in this year in order to utilize, hopefully utilize that technology to have a master schedule that supports increased balance in our class sizes. We also are going to look to explore opportunities for scheduling our PLCs at MMS. Currently, our teachers are in PLCs either during lunch once a week, which is consistent with past practice, but which we would agree should not continue being our practice going forward. And we also have some teachers who are doing PLC twice a week during flex, which means they're getting 21 minutes twice a week. That's not an optimum amount of time to sit and have a conversation where you're examining student work and collaborating on improving your instructional methods. So we would look to be able to give those teachers a more consistent amount of time as their colleagues for their PLC work. In the coming years, we would like to consider if we can increase student choice in our elective offerings within those quarterlies so that we can continue to personalize our students' learning experiences at MMS and explore pathways. Similarly, we are looking to expand our school counseling curriculum and programming for career exploration and pathways. We have spectacular school counselors, and we want to make sure that their curriculum outlines the work that they're doing clearly and cohesively. We will continue to review and revise the gifted and talented programming and scheduling. While that work was later into the scheduling consultant's work brought up, it was not something that was able to be completed in this time frame with which the scheduling consultant was working. There is work being done this year on some of the gifted and talented curricula, and we would hope in the coming years to be able to consider how we might implement some of those requests to consider moving the gifted and talented so that students aren't missing lunch with their peers in order to participate in that, because we certainly understand the social value of participating in lunch. Similarly, we would want to examine the purpose and impact of flex, study hall, and recess, meaning why do we have each of these scheduled in our day? What purpose are these programs serving for our students? How are students accessing them? What is the staffing necessarily to maximize those intended outcomes? Along with that, we would then research and analyze staffing models. That's work that has begun over the last several years. And so I think it is important at this point, as we're considering all of that above, to continue looking at what's the most effective staffing model for MMS that manages all of those priorities, including the team. As a result of that, we may decide to consider alternative bell schedules and a rotational schedule. That is connected to what Colleen said about we have a different number of rotational days at each of the schools. And so if there is a need to share itinerant staff, it's a little complicated that we're on an odd number of days and our colleagues in the other buildings are on an even number of days. And again, that may result in us needing to explore the design and staffing of duties if our FTE continues to change through attrition. That is not a list of things we can accomplish in 8 months. That is a list of things that we need to continue doing in the coming 8 months and onwards. And now let's take some questions.
Can we go back to that last slide before I open it up? And so understanding that that is a lot more than the next 8 months, what are you talking about in the next 8 months? What do I see there?
Yep. So that first bullet, the first 2 bullet points are, I think, my priority for the next 8 months, because our teachers shouldn't be having PLC during lunch. And so we need to prioritize coming up with a solution for that next year. And as we've referenced, we want to look at what the process has been for developing that master schedule in collaboration with central services, in collaboration with our department chairs, so that we can look at the most effective and responsible utilization of our FTE. I'll give us an example. We have those 2 English teachers who are serving in the literacy intervention this year. Again, if you move all teachers to 5 classes, you lose out on interventions potentially. Could those teachers have been scheduled for a 5th class? Yes, but it would have been off grade level. So that has not been a practice in all of our departments previously. So that does have staffing implications. So those are just pieces that we need to work through this year as we look at our enrollment and our FTE for the year to come.
Thank you. Okay, I'll open it to questions. Robin.
Just one question on the gifted and talented programming. Is it currently running?
Yes.
But it's still being held during lunch?
Correct.
Okay, but you're looking potentially at changing.
And I don't know that that's something that would happen for next year, but it is within the scope of things that we need to examine. Absolutely.
Sarah, I have a lot of questions, but I will focus on the rainbow slide for a second. How many children are there in an off-team class, or do you have a percentage of, I would just like to know, those 59% of off-team math students, what is that number? And is it, how many kids are being affected by rainbow classes?
Yep. So if we include those double accelerated kids,
Yeah.
those 9 sections that are intentionally rainbow by design, as of the time that I pulled this data, because again, our data is always fluid, we were looking at about 348 students.
So that's a third of the school is off-team. And are they spread across 6, 7, 8, or is it heavier in a certain grade?
That I don't have in front of me.
Okay.
I would say that not including the double accelerated, because that is a consistent practice from previous years. So I do want to distinguish, if we take out the students who have the only thing that they're in a rainbow class is double accelerated, we're left with about 190.
Okay. And do you know, and maybe this is digging too deeply into the data, but do you know if a student is in one rainbow class or consistently across?
The vast majority of them are in one.
Okay.
Like of that 192, we're looking at counting double accelerated math, 149, not counting double accelerated math, 167.
Okay.
Julie.
Thank you. So to build on that, last year during the budget season, we were told that we had 90 students who were on rainbow classes. And I believe it was 53 of them were on math classes. So that's a pretty significant jump in the number of students who are in a rainbow class.
I believe that 90, from my look at it, two things. One, that's referring to instances, not students. So the number of students, this isn't great for me, but the number of students might actually be a little less because I don't know of those 90 times how many students had 1, 2, or more classes that were rainbow. That 90, as far as I understand it, also does not include the double accelerated math, those sections. And I don't know whether that was 8 or 9 sections last year, but comparable number.
Okay.
So what you're really comparing there is 90 to 190, give or
Okay.
take.
Still pretty.
Oh, no, pretty significant.
jump.
I just wanted to clarify it wasn't against 350. or so.
Probably also
Just-
begging for a chart that lays
Absolutely.
out what we're looking at right now.
Absolutely.
And what it compares to
Mhm.
last year. So we have apples and apples
Sure.
available to us. And I would also, I don't know if you know this, I'd like to know what the percentage of off-team teachers, not percentage, I'd like to know numbers and how many teachers are teaching across teams and what that looks like and how that impacts daily team meetings. Because if we have teachers now teaching 5 sections and we have 3 teams per grade or 4 teams per grade in the case of 8th grade, I have to imagine we have a higher rate of incidence of teachers who are teaching across teams.
And I can come back with an exact number for you. I believe it is the 3 math teachers who are off team. And then there is, right.
2 math and 1 special
Yep.
education. That's it. There are no other
Correct.
teachers in the building who are teaching across teams. Okay, that's surprising to me. And that compares to last year, how?
We had 2 math.
Just the 2, right? Yeah.
Special education teachers, that's a new.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Well, that's happy news. Katie?
I'm concerned about the study hall coverage impact. I don't remember having discussion about that being an area of potential impact with this last year. And it seems to me that there's quite a bit of value of having content teachers available to students during study hall. That seems to me to be a very general access point, a very normal. And by removing content teachers to instructional, that seems to be a barrier to access. So I'd like to revisit that. I'd like to kind of collectively add that to the list of impact and scope of what these changes have been in practice versus what they were in theory last year. I'm curious about what will happen to the team model next year when the very large current 5th grade class comes up to the middle school. You know, we used to have a consistent number of teams across. Has that been discussed?
Yep. So 2 points. One, I'd like to thank you for bringing up the study hall. That is part of why I really thought it was important to include that information in the presentation. In having the team teachers teach 5 classes, that is, you're right, one of the things that is no longer available. However, we do, as I said, have students still having access to their teachers during flex and before school, but it is a difference in practice, absolutely. In terms of the incoming 6th graders for next year, we would look at having the 4 teams be at the 6th grade level. And so that is something that we're already starting to look at in terms of allocation of FTE.
And the implication of that would be that it's potential for every year there to be a rotating mix of teachers who were teaching 8th grade one year, 6th grade the next. There's a lot more fluctuation. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then one final question, if I may, on this. Well, I shouldn't say final. You know, the board was made aware of some specific instances, like the PLC lunch, and you know, another one was that there are instances where there is the exact same class and just 2 different sections, one having 14 students, one having 25. How do we say that students are receiving equitable experiences when there's a huge difference in available time? How do we say that teachers are? how are we looking at and thinking of that in terms of this growing list of things that we would hopefully be looking to improve in this current school year and prevent in future?
So there's a lot of parts to that question, and I appreciate it. If I work a little backwards, one of the things that I can add on to Julie's previous question also is that when I asked my school counselors to go through and look at all of our students who are currently in an off-team class, there's about 30 or so who, at this point, if we were going to move their schedules, which we're not going to do, could move back onto team. And that's a result of all the iterations of things that happen when you're balancing schedules and when you're hand scheduling. And because our counselors did that work in just a couple days, as opposed to having access to the schedule beginning really in April and May. And so that is some of the increase in the number of teams that I would, students off team, that I would hope and expect to be different for next year. I bring that up because it's related to the question of balancing. In those movements, as Dr. Adley referenced, we would anticipate being able to do more work with balancing our sections this year. Some of that is connected to schedule constraints with what classes are running at what time. Is there another available class to put that student into? Is that class of 25 largely students who happen to have the combination of Mandarin and orchestra, and so they're funneling into that class because of what's available at different periods? Those are all things that can impact those section differences and discrepancies. And so that is part of why when I described work that I would hope our team would do this year in professional learning, looking at the capacity of Aspen to help us in designating that master schedule was one of those steps.
Sarah, just the idea of using Aspen or any technology to be able to develop master schedule seems intuitive to me that that's something that we maybe should have been doing. Does the high school use Aspen to develop their master schedule?
Right. Yes, it does. Yes. And a significant difference between the high school and the middle school, as you know, is that teaming model.
Right.
And so we're going to try to use Aspen this year to do it and embark upon significant professional learning as a team in order to make that effort. I don't know what the outcome is going to be yet, but our commitment is to do that learning and to communicate with Aspen and see what our ability is to do. And if that can have that desired outcome of leading to more balance within the schedule.
Okay, thanks.
John?
Is the, when I look at the team model slide and the percentage off team instances, when you look at, I know the answer just based on the mathematics, but when you look at 6th, 7th, and 8th, is there a preference to limit the rainbow classes as the kids are younger, and then as they get older in 8th grade, have more rainbow classes as they approach high school? I'm just trying to get the mentality or the means behind the schedule.
I think I'm hearing two different parts to that question. One is about what is the current frequency of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and that's information that I need to come back to you with.
And
the
what's
other
the
is about the
intent?
philosophy of Rainbow. And so when we look at that slide around drivers of Rainbow, there's not an intent of, we think it's better for students in this grade to experience Rainbow classes than others. It's really looking at largely what are those limiting factors within the student schedule that are prioritizing where their schedule is falling based on the number of sections available, that it's resulting in students being in a rainbow. I do think when we think about staffing models going forward, that is the kind of question that could help us and inform, are there other creative solutions in looking at how we utilize our FTE to try to limit in a particular space or not?
Okay, I mean, the reason I say that is the high school is one big rainbow, right? So.
Absolutely.
So as you get older, you might want to, the philosophy might want to accustom them to a little more mixing amongst the teams.
It's a conversation that could be had.
Thank you.
Dennis?
I want to go back to this Aspen point because I had a question on, I had the same question on DHS, but my other question is, we've talked about looking at a different vendor to supply this. Does this vendor have the similar, there's two parts to it. Does a new vendor have the scheduling capabilities? And is it wise to spend PLC if we're going to be switching to a new vendor?
Rich?
They both offer the same thing.
And then the question is it wise to spend time if we're going, I mean,
So
I guess
even if
cart
we
before
were
the
to-
horse, but
Even if you were to switch to another vendor,
be similar.
it's a couple years out.
Okay.
You're not gonna be able to switch to Power School next year, even if you put the money in it. It's good 18 to 24 months.
Okay, thank you.
Julie?
Thank you. So I'd like to kind of take the conversation up a level at this point, if that's okay. And kind of go back to this overall, what we were trying to do and where are we now? And I want to go back to the actual class size piece of it, which was, as we've said, the goal was to have fewer small classes and certainly not have more large classes. And we don't have either of those things. We went in the wrong direction on both of them. And I hear the comments about what the means and the averages are, but no student's experience is an average or a mean. They're not in a room with the average, right? And I went back and I looked at our policy 6510, which I know we referenced, it's in the materials tonight, but we only have page 2. There's actually a page 1. And page 1, which we revised in October of 2022. And one of the revisions we made was to put in an explanation about when, why, and how the superintendent should have the flexibility to run smaller classes. But nowhere in the policy or in any of our discussions in the 3 meetings where we talked about it, did we ever talk about when and how it's okay for the classes to get bigger? So that was certainly not something that we had an appetite for. We also don't talk anywhere about having averages fit within this. Like the intent of this policy, it seems quite clear to me, is that the classes are within the guidelines. And we're not there right now. So we need to figure out how to get there or back to there, I'm almost tempted to say. The other piece that I'll just add in right now before I give up the microphone is the sort of next steps and the going forwards that we've seen throughout tonight's presentations. And I appreciate the spirit of them, but literally everything has been put on the table, from new bell schedules, new staffing models across all 3 presentations, not just in yours. So I thought there was a whole lot of work that was supposed to have gotten us successfully with trust to here. And this isn't a good place now. And I'm very concerned about how much work is being laid out as to what needs to be looked into, explored, and employed in order to get somewhere better. So that's, I don't think that conversation all gets settled tonight, unfortunately for me, but that's what I wanted to put out there. Thank you.
So maybe I'm not paraphrasing you at all, but if I could put maybe a point on it. So we were not looking for this distribution of class sizes. What can you realistically do next year so we're not having the same report again?
Yep. So realistically, we intend to hope to have more time to be able to finalize that master schedule, which also allows for, as I mentioned, that increase in hand scheduling, the ability to ask Aspen to say, all right, I moved that English class I referenced earlier. Now you re-roll all the kids into it, rather than having the counselors or the assistant principals or the other administrators say, okay, those 12 kids were impacted. Now I have to hand move all those kids, which could increase in rainbow situations. So that is one concrete step that just having the time, however that master schedule is created with whatever success we're able to do from Aspen in building that we would be able to utilize at least that technology to be able to reduce the hand scheduling and to be able to hopefully reduce some of the rainbow. And in doing so, have Aspen looking at what are the max class sizes that are in there. So that's my hope.
Okay.
I can't guarantee that all of those things are going to change. There are scheduling constraints in our schedule, but we certainly understand and the priorities.
Rich and Marge, with your HR and your wonderful IT knowledge, can you speak to the question from your perspectives of getting a more of an even distribution? What have you seen? Have you seen other districts that were more effectively? I mean, it sounds to me like we are asking our counselors to do quite a bit of work with Excel, which is wonderful, but not very efficient or probably reliable. Can you guys please speak to the question? Yeah, I'll start with you, Rich.
So the majority of the classes and the core subjects that are over that 24 are all at 25, with the exception of PE and music. And so it is smoothing out those sections. So for example, you might have a science 8 that has one class of 25 and another class of 12 or 13. And so it's using technology to kind of figure out the pieces of the puzzle so that 25 might become 22 and that 13 becomes 18. That's a lot easier to do. It's like building a budget. It's a lot easier to make a mistake if you're writing it by hand on a notepad than it is using a formula in Excel. And so districts like Greenwich uses scheduling modules in Aspen because they have Aspen in Fairfield County. Other districts that have PowerSchool use scheduling modules in PowerSchool.
So I also have seen other districts use software, whether it's Aspen or some other student information system. But it's also pretty common in both middle school and high school for counselors to have to do some hand tweaking over the summer. That's why our contract actually provides for extra counselor days in order to do that. So you'll have both, but earlier, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Amy and Alan, do you guys want to add anything?
I would add that exactly to echo Rich's comments, that there's the element of human error when there are lots of moving parts. I am much more familiar with another system, not Aspen, so I myself will be participating in the professional learning with the middle school team.
This is one of the areas that I said earlier on, that alluded to, that we need to do a better job of, regardless whether it's hand or technology, in terms of the scheduling of it initially, the setting of the number of sections, that type of basic thing. That the software itself, I've done scheduling in years gone by. The software itself is only as good as the information you put into it in terms of the structure and your initial decision making. So we have to be better at the initial decision making right up front.
Okay. Katie.
I'm concerned that we're talking around the issue a little bit. And it seems to me that we don't have enough teachers. And it seems to me that if the issue were just about getting the technology and just getting that scheduling right so that we don't have 12 and 25 and that we have 22 and 18, then it seems to me that this consultant that we paid $100,000 of should have done that. That was why they were hired. So somewhere we have a disconnect because we were led to believe that this consultant, that we could have lost even more teachers than we did last year and we would be totally fine. But Alan brought to us a cut that reduced less. And yet here we are with a mess. And I'm not just concerned, I'm quite concerned with how we prevent this for next year and what we need to rebuild and give back. But I'm really concerned about what's happening in the middle school this year and how these kids are being impacted. And by just saying that we didn't have enough time because the budget was decided, the number of FTEs were decided in May, I'm having a hard time swallowing that. It seems like the process, the concept failed.
So to be clear, very clear, I'm not saying that the reason we're in the situation which we're in, which respectfully back, I don't consider it a mess. I consider that we have achieved the spirit of what we wanted to do. Yes, you could say, Alan, you still went over the guideline. Well, that's why it's a guideline, right? We went over by one student. I don't think it's ideal what we did, but I think we can rectify it. But I just respectfully disagree that it's a mess. That's, I don't know how many people agree with that, but I would strongly disagree with that. And I think that the kids in the school are doing fine. Their services are being delivered the way they should be being delivered. Do we want as many people on Rainbow? Do we want as many classes in Balance? No. But it's far from a mess.
Okay.
Jill?
Yeah.
I just want to, Alan, I hear what you're saying, that 25 versus 24. I agree with you. If it's one or two classes, that doesn't make a huge difference. I don't think a student's experience in class of 24 versus 25 is significant. What I am concerned about, though, is the 29 classes. That increase, I don't want to see it next year. I think we have to figure out how we bring that number down. And whether that's 25 to 24, okay. But to have 29 out of our guidelines is high. And I'm concerned that if we continue to go down this path of, teachers teaching 4, that next year there are more teachers teaching 5 because of whatever it may be. We got to figure out how to make that happen so that we're not out of guideline.
If I can just say, and I know this wasn't at all what Katie was intending by her remarks, I'm thinking about our teachers who are listening tonight. And when we say it's a mess, I know that you're talking about the schedules and the sections, and I just want to reiterate, I've had less than a quarter at MMS so far, and everything I have seen from our teachers who I know are watching right now, and who I know are putting in significant hard work and care and love for the teachers it's wonderful. And I'm seeing so many beautiful things. And so I just feel like it's important that we recognize all of the good things that are happening in that professional work and that professional
Can I
capacity.
please
Yes.
clarify my comments?
Yes.
And I know that wasn't your intention. I just know they're listening and I know some of them are
Yes,
concerned.
thank you for the reminder that everyone is listening. I appreciate it. Thank you, Kate. Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Katie.
So to be explicitly clear, what impacts teachers impacts students. And to be really clear, I fought hard last year for these changes not to happen. So I don't appreciate you recouching my comments. And I would say that some of the things that are messy are teachers not getting their lunch. Some of the things that are messy are teachers not having equitable experiences or not having time to plan and meet with their colleagues. So when I said that I think that the current schedule at the middle school is a mess, I was not just talking about student impact. I was 100% talking about teacher impact as well. So I would prefer that you might ask me to clarify versus paraphrasing.
And again, I did say I didn't believe that was the intention behind what you were saying. And I did follow last season. So I do know you are very strongly advocating to avoid those cuts. And so that wasn't my intention. I'm speaking as someone who is new in the administrative role in this building and who has understood the difficult season that our teachers went through last year and the concern, frankly, that is raised for some of them as these conversations start coming up again, wondering what are the implications for us as we head into another budget season, and just wanting to honor, as I know you did last year, and as you do tonight, the hard work that they're doing and the impact of all of that on them and by extension on students.
Yeah, and it's 10 o'clock. So I'm going to shut this conversation down. We'll
No,
move on.
Jill,
to-
I just want to, I'm sorry, but I haven't really talked about in this section, so could I just get 1 minute? Sure. We all voted for the budget. It was a very tough budget season. I think this highlights the discussion that we're about to have around budgeting and the inefficiencies that it's caused. Last year's season caused this board, this administration, directly impacting the students of having budget revisions, significant budget revisions. So as you're going to hear in a minute, and I'll stop there, is it's really important that people who are in the fiscal control of this town hear this, understand the impact that it's having. And we work to actually set a target earlier, so we're not scrambling in May to meet what the budget that this board set unanimously.
All right, thank you. With that, I'll move on to the update on K through 3. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
I'll
I
move
look
on to
forward
the
to the
update
ongoing dialogue.
of the update of K to 3 literacy and EduPlanet. This is what came out of the curriculum committee. It's meant to be a very brief, just sort of status report on where we are.
Let's wait for Cass to pull that up. Thank you so much. And as both Sarah and Jill mentioned, there was a robust conversation around the K-3 literacy update. So Mrs. Droller will share the elements, the most important highlights of that, and as well potential impact for budget as we move forward. And then I'll follow up with the piece on EduPlanet.
Sure, and I'll be very brief. Just a reminder of the work that we're doing this year as we pilot our Into Reading program and some other resources. 3 possible outcomes: keep our program as is, adopt an approved model from on the state's list, or maintain our current resources with enhancements. And I just want to say that everything that we're doing and our teachers are doing who are engaged in this work is always with students at the very heart. And we want to make sure that student needs are being met. So the Into Reading pilot, as you know, is in grades 1, 2, and 3, 7 teams, 5 schools. We are also implementing this year a vocabulary resource, WordLove, in grades 1 through 5. Any classroom that is not implementing the pilot We're exploring a new resource with explicit grammar lessons. Again, that's for those classrooms that are not implementing the pilot. And we're having some professional learning around assessment literacy so that we can provide targeted, differentiated instruction. It's something that we're always working on getting better at. So the budget impact, in terms of interreading, there's been ongoing professional learning sessions geared towards specific grade level in October and November 5th during our professional learning day. Some preliminary feedback from teachers. The interreading program provides high quality literature that they really like, strong vocabulary instruction that they're seeing an impact in. There is more prompt driven writing than they are accustomed to. And they are finding the lessons more teacher directed and whole class in nature. They're navigating the multiple components, which is to be expected with any new program. They are looking forward to sharing some of their feedback with the curriculum committee on November 4th. And we just put 2 budget items. So with our compendium of resources and some of the enhancements that we would recommend, we estimate that that would be about $100,000 in next year's budget for K-5. If we were to implement into reading, it would be $410,000. So, and that does not include, for whatever option we do, we are hoping to enhance our classroom libraries because we always think that that's important. And we proposed $50,000 for that in next year's budget, or we will be proposing.
And EduPlanet?
Oh, and just we wanted to keep together the literacy updates, and we've included the October 2nd curriculum committee for anyone who'd like to see that in full view, and the October 16th parent session that was held just last week.
Thank you.
EduPlanet features. This slide is just a reminder of really the most, I guess, the key features of EduPlanet and why it was selected originally to support and warehouse the district work in the area of curriculum. So if moving forward into the next slide, the current and intended future use. So basically with the EduPlanet expansion, what we're looking to do is right now on the left-hand side, currently we're using EduPlanet to make sure that we're aligning to content standards. We can do a gap analysis to ensure that there are content standards addressed across the curriculum, across grade levels and within departments. And for unit planning, there was a very small leadership cohort that was involved in the initial training with EduPlanet. And there was kind of a very focused effort on UBD, which makes sense. That's how that software is built to support that curricular framework. Moving forward, there will be a greater emphasis on aligning the elements of Vision of the Graduate to the curriculum work. Thinking about the systemic accessibility, it will be incredibly important that all supervisors who monitor the implementation of curriculum have access, and that we have access to not just the curriculum writers, but to all staff that is implementing the curriculum. We're also looking to have consistent professional learning. The piece about UBD is that when we understand that we're having a backwards design, there's a greater connection between the actual assessing of student learning, how we're instructing, and the curricular standards. So that needs to be a greater focus moving forward. Additionally, I've asked to have elements of universal design for learning integrated into our EduPlanet platform and to provide greater professional learning in what the tenets of universal design for learning are, so that we'll have special educators at the table when we're designing the curriculum. The next slide just shows that the current FY25 budget the figure was $7,889. The license expansion, so that we don't have just the small cohort that has accessibility to EduPlanet, but all of our administrators and all of our teachers, is that figure. And to the right, the $23,910 would be inclusive of an extended professional learning kind of platform for our teachers, not beyond UBD to also address UDL.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
I just have a
Sarah.
quick question.
Yeah.
Going back to the first slide, and it's not, we talked about this a little bit, the parent discussion last week. The outcome A, B, and C. If we do A, we know that we are in compliance with the new legislation. If we do B, we are out of compliance. Sorry. If we do C, again, are we out of compliance? So I think the question that was raised is, what if we feel like this interreading pilot does not meet our needs for our students? What do we do? And what is the what are the ramifications of that decision?
So one of the things that I just want to start by saying is that we've involved 60 teachers on the steering committee, inclusive of preschool through grade 12, although the statute is related to just K-3 literacy, and that was very intentional. We've also placed teacher experience and teacher implementation at the heart of student decision-making, as the point was made earlier, that teacher experience directly correlates to student learning outcomes. And so we certainly wouldn't adopt a program that we don't think meets the needs of our learners. Right. Another thing that I appreciate is that we've discussed here and at the Board of Ed Curriculum Committee that we won't accelerate decision-making because of the budget timeline necessarily, that we will continue to move forward with great intentionality. With regard to if we have any one of these outcomes that is not a state-approved program, there are other school districts that are doing that. There are some school districts that have wholeheartedly adopted a program in full with actually, I would say, limited research and limited teacher voice. And there are other districts that are simply just not doing anything different. They're not changing their current programming, even though they don't have programming that's aligned to the state-approved list. So all of those things are potential options, and we continue to work with the state. In fact, we have another meeting with the state to tell them about our progress later this week.
Okay.
And to ask more clarifying questions about how they're progress monitoring what districts are doing.
Right.
For example, districts that are making moves or districts that are
Right.
deciding
And
to not make any
I
changes.
personally would, I would think the board would like some clarity around if we are not in full compliance with the legislation, what is the state going to do about it?
Okay, so next time you come back, you might have a little more answer for us.
Did you-
No, I can ask them at the next meeting. We've been very clear about these options with them, yes.
Great, thank you. The other thing that came up in both the curriculum and the budget subcommittee or finance subcommittee meetings is the fact that we are attempting to make a decision on a timeline that more or less mirrors our budget process, but we are not going to tie this decision to the budget process. We will go through the budget process with a placeholder, and we will make the academic decision based on the academic criteria on that timeline. And so that's why we're leaving a placeholder in place. We want to make sure we have optimal integrity in both.
And I know that we appreciate that, especially our teachers who are feeling like this is a little bit rushed.
Yeah, okay. Katie?
Thank you. I had the opportunity to watch the literacy presentation today, and I found some disconnect between what was presented then versus what we had been brought to us at the subcommittee meeting. Specifically, most of the presentation, I had thought that it was going to be focused on like, what is the pilot, and what does that mean? But 75% of it was really about kind of reviewing current practices and philosophy that did not seem to align completely with the conversations that we've been having at the table at the subcommittee. So my question is, kind of what is the next update that is coming back to the curriculum committee? And also, if there is a possibility to include, a teacher or two from the steering committee as well, I would really, really love to be able to hear from the teachers that are in the classroom would be really nice. I think that, what struck me from the presentation that I watched recorded is it was a lot of kind of abstract philosophy as opposed to like what's happening with our kids. And there's definitely some outdated practices that made it into the slideshow. So I think that it would be really helpful to have a very clear path and understanding of what our goals are, because we do have still these couple of different things going on. And at the last committee meeting, I remember, Amy, that you were very specific about the kids that weren't in the pilot, that they wouldn't be left behind, and that we were ensuring a consistent experience for all of our K through 3, well, I guess really 1 through 3 there, but even though they might be using, different programs, that the teachers, and that gave me a lot of confidence in the way that, Darienne's dedication to its students. But there were pieces in that presentation, again, that just didn't align. So I guess I'll shut up now. I'd like to make sure that we are on a clear path and that we understand what is and what isn't kind of in here, understanding that there can be compendium, but how does that not become a mishmash? How does that not revert back?
So I think it's a good question for the next curriculum committees. Maybe you could formalize that a little bit in an
Sure.
email and provide that to.
Probably a great idea.
Yeah, Sarah and Amy, and then it'll show up
Okay,
on the
great.
4th. Okay.
And it is the intent that there'll be teachers at the meeting on the 4th.
Dave, you have your hand up.
I have my hand up, it might be the wrong icon. Quick question, in the attached materials and from the presentation, we discussed the curriculum blueprint. Do we have an estimated date of what that potential deliverable or rollout date could be? And sorry if I missed it.
No, that's okay. I didn't speak particularly about that. That is essentially the course descriptions that are available on EduPlanet now currently. What we do have is, I'm looking across now, the core areas, English, CTE, social studies, mathematics, music, science, are all at nearly 100%, meaning there are course descriptions available for those courses on EduPlanet. Something that we're looking to make more progress in are the areas where we have had new administrators hired over the summer in social studies and English. I would also tell you that some of the other areas, like art was mentioned tonight, there's been less work done in that department. So it really depends, I guess, upon department. But for the most part, the core areas are all complete.
I know we're getting short on time. I guess my question was to where it says share with your community. Does that mean with parents or does that mean internally in the school? And when will we be able to share with parents?
So the share with the community does mean share publicly with all stakeholders. And so we have in the core areas, almost every area, every course is complete with the course description. The elective areas are not as complete. The other piece is stage 1. That's where it's like the overarching unit description. We have, mathematics is at 70% complete. Where parents can access 70% of the stage 1 curriculum for the units in that department. English is at 31%. So an anticipated timeline for that would be available based on that curriculum revision cycle that we have, that 7-year cycle, and each department has a different timeline, which is also good because that relates to budget implications, for example, for purchasing new resources.
Got it. Thanks very much.
Welcome.
Okay. We'll move on to the next one, but go ahead, Brenna. And then I was going to say to you guys, the remainder is budget and policy. If you all would like to do homework or sleep or whatever else you guys do, text, I don't know. You're welcome to leave if you like. Go ahead, Brenna.
I think our folks have departed us by now, but I just wanted to give a thanks for all these interdisciplinary efforts. They definitely don't go unnoticed, especially within the fine arts. What's a child without art? What's a child without music, right? That's what it's about.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the comment. Okay.
Feel free, Brenna.
Yeah,
Right,
please.
Brian, just to step out.
Go to bed. Yes, you've already seen this first memo
Yeah.
anyway. No, Dennis, you sit right there. Okay. Update on fiscal year 26 budget initiatives. We've seen this memo, so Alan, if you're just going to walk us through anything new.
Well, I don't really need to walk through any of it, to be honest with you, Madam
Okay.
Chair. What has been changed just literally since the last meeting, which is just over a week ago, is in yellow. The only two things I would update, the K-3 literacy that we just had the revised update on the financials for that. It's either around 400 or around 100K. And then the last one, which is the 5th grade departmentalization we talked about, and the decision was made to defer that consideration until 25, 26. Anything else that was highlighted in yellow is a relative change or an update from the last discussion.
Okay. We had some folks comment on the early start times. What we have decided for now is that this PLC may solve some of the problem, but this is not something we're going to take on this year. Is that correct?
That's currently where it stands. That if PLC plays out as one of the options, it may provide opportunities for our secondary students to have a different change of schedule.
Okay, Dennis?
Yeah, so in the discussions about class sizes, there was a lot of talk about rotational schedules and bell schedules. Is that anything we have the appetite to take on? Because it seemed like we can provide better services to students, especially in the arts, by changing our schedules from elementary, middle school, and high school and aligning them all similarly.
I don't know that I would take on that systematically between now and December. If it falls within what comes out of a a review of this topic, then okay, but just explicitly, I wouldn't be taking that on.
Okay, because what I was more concerned about was it sounded like, and I don't know if it was in her priorities, but Kate was talking about looking at this. And to me, I think this needs to be a district-wide view as opposed to the middle school decides what they do and then the elementary may not change and the high school may not. So to me, I think it needs to be a district-wide view before one school tackles changing theirs.
If something falls out of that, yes. If it doesn't, if there's a new schedule that's brought back, it also has to make sure we don't hinder some of those other things too. So we would look at it from that perspective.
So we're unlikely to see it though, is what I think. We're not going to see it this year. My understanding from Kate was that that's some time.
It's removed, yes.
Yes, okay. So not, but I think your point is well taken that it should be, when it does happen, it should be a systemic look. John?
I'm just trying to reconcile the next memo with this memo. And I think we put Teen Talk as an initiative because it's a grant that's not solidified for next year. Should that be in this memo? Teen Talk at MMS.
Yeah, it just,
Understood.
it hasn't been just throughout the process.
Right. We should probably, is this the last time we're going to see this new initiative memo?
I think it's on again, it's on a regular basis.
Okay, so we should probably put that
Okay.
Teen Talk at MMS, consistent with the budgeting memo.
Okay.
I just want to quickly wholeheartedly support everything Dennis just said should be done district-wide. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you for the work on that, guys. Initial fiscal year 26 budget forecast. Rich.
So we shared this at the finance committee. We took all existing contracts for current staff and rolled them over their applicable step or anniversary increase. We have some assumed turnover savings based on the experience we had this year, both for teachers and paraprofessionals. So salaries alone will look about just under $3 million or a 2.5% increase. Just that. We did spend a lot of time talking about health insurance and benefits. We are experiencing very high claims yet again. Our loss ratio is currently 118%, which is down from last year's 134%. But we are going to see a significant increase in the cost of health insurance. We do have a rate cap of 11.9%. We are not likely to be below that 11.9%. And so that, based on the current census, is 1.3 million. We're just over 1.3 million. As every year, we also have non-personnel increases. The biggest factor in that is transportation, which probably makes up a little more than half of that. And then we have other things like Fitch lease, the garbage contract, the annual audit, smaller things like that. That's a little over $400,000. As we've talked about this year, we do have some grant compression. The district did lose all its Title I funding, and so that's $135,000. As we've talked about in the past, the wellness coordinator, which was initially funded 100% by a grant, was moved 1/3 into the district's budget this year and 2/3 in a grant. 1/3 of that grant is going away. And so next year it would have to be 2/3 in the operating budget and 1/3 in a grant. And then the year after it would all go into the Board of Ed's budget. There were deferrals from last year's budget for athletic uniforms and district technology. And so that's another $135,000. The technology replacement cycle is another $150,000. Special education anticipated tuition increases are just over $600,000 or a half a point on the budget. And contracted services, which are speech, PT, OT, behavioral services, is another $178,000. Based on the existing demographer report, we are looking at one additional elementary section. There will be a new demographer report in November, so that can change. The right to read, we do have that placeholder of $650,000. It might be slightly lower based on what was shared, probably a little over $500,000, $530,000, I believe. And then offsets, we do have the contract for ESY transportation, which would come off because we'd be using our in-district special education vans and drivers. And so you're looking at a pro forma budget of just over $6.5 million or 5.49%. We did look at some of the initiatives that were on the screen earlier. If the district were to do a facility condition survey, Teen Talk at the middle school, the expansion of EduPlanet, play-based learning, the website redesign, PLCs, and a potential transition program, you're looking at another 1.25 million. So the two together, you're looking at just over 7.8 million or 6.5% budgetary increase.
Okay, any questions? John?
I mean, I just want to also highlight, I guess it's what, the fourth page, and we discussed this in the finance committee, and, you know, looking at where the offsets could be, are listed, supervision and security, completion of 4 to 5 classes at Middlesex, which has its complexity, as we've just discussed, staffing and programming, and certain things in athletics. So, you know, and then what we did was, Rich did was run a sensitivity analysis outlining that, you know, if we were to seek efficiencies, every 300,000 represents about 0.25% or 25 basis points of the budget. It's important to understand the challenges that we're facing this year. And as complex as the Middlesex staffing changes were, we have far less of a cookie jar, if you want to, or staffing excess, I should say. I don't want to call it a cookie jar, to realize that. So each and every year we found efficiencies. This busing contract was or busing change was a huge one. And each and every year we're getting closer and closer to cutting into the true programming and benefit for our children. So I will end my statement with, we have no idea what's going on with the other, whatever you want to call it, 33 to 40% of the town budget. So we will do our best to budget appropriately for our students in a responsible manner, but it would be really helpful to hear from the Board of Finance in terms of their thoughts. So we don't run into a revision process that runs as late and causes delays in terms of implementation of some programming. So I don't know how I can say it more clear than that.
Julie?
Do we know when the Board of Finance is planning their public discussion of how they're going to arrive at guidance?
They did not have it on their October agenda, so we know they didn't do it in October. They've just, as we know, you just added their new 7th member. And so their next meeting is November, I think 18th currently, which is starting to get a little bit late in the process for us.
Okay.
Because we're looking at giving guidance to Alan earlier than that. But that's the best answer I can give you at this stage.
And has our schedule been communicated to them?
Yes,
And does this memo go to them?
it has done.
I don't know how much more clear we can be.
Yes, and can I just ask, John, if I understood you correctly, were you suggesting that really we're probably looking at 1, 3, and 4 because 2 on that list has become quite complicated already?
Well, I was just pointing out 1, 2, 3, and 4. I wasn't making any
Okay.
value judgments on
Okay,
them.
I thought you were suggesting that.
No, I just based on what we talked about number 2 earlier. It's like, it's complex and, you know, and we came a little short in terms of meeting what the objectives were and staying within the guidelines of what we were targeting. So I'm just taking a realistic view of that and fully knowing we don't have budget control or some other items, why renegotiation, things that we've implemented over the past several years. You know, again, Rich is good and Alan's good in terms of finding efficiencies, but I think these efficiencies are going to be programmatic related. I think Alan, I mean, you can comment on it, but said such at our finance committee meeting.
Well, I'm saying as much here, so.
Robin, and Dave, I see you after that.
And I kind of mentioned this during the finance committee meeting, but I just want to reiterate, I obviously this is going to be a tough year because we have very large drivers of a budget that are basically out of our control with the contracts, which we did to benefit our teachers and to, you know, help make this a great place for our schools and what our teachers bring to it. But the healthcare costs and all the other drivers that we really don't have control. And I just want to make sure that during this process, we really need to make sure that we are focused on our student needs. And I don't want to end up cutting programs that are going to impact our students. And I hope that the other bodies in town will also take that into consideration. Obviously, the guidance is impacted by other things as well at the town level, but these are our schools and this is why families move here. And I think we need to really make sure that we do what is right and what is the Board of Education's mandate, which is to do what we need to do for our schools and our students.
Dave?
Thank you. Just looking at this and seeing where we are in terms of the contractual increase year over year of about 2.5%. And then looking at the sensitivity analysis, the year over year run rate 21 through 24, running at about a 3.4. So if I step away from the question of whether or not 3.4 is sustainable year over year for, compound growth rate for our budget, and then looking at last year, the simple math is that we, to stay at the 3.4 run rate, need to be at about a 2.05 this year. Given that where we are on teachers and administrative contracts, 2.5 to 2.05 is probably not unsustainable or not undoable, I should say. The question to my mind is how are we going to do more with less in those gaps outside of the contractual increases that we're going to have? And I think that's going to be the challenge for the administration this year, is to find ways to do more with less without cutting programs, without reducing services to students and performing at the level that is expected of our parents and why they come to this town. So to my mind, 2.5 is about as high as we can go. It's going to be interesting to see how we get there. And I can't wait to hear from the Board of Finance as to where they think the number should be. But to my mind, it is significantly lower than where we are with the 5. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for your comments. This is an input along with what comes next, which is the capital projects. Kevin, you are probably here till now and then up and back here in like 3 hours. So we have a space in the facilities committee meeting, which is coming up. So if there are major questions about this capital plan that we can handle in facilities, just in honor of our staff, we have that opportunity. Thank you, Kevin.
You're very welcome. I know you've had a long night and we can, this year for the presentation, I decided to include some photos so that you guys can see visually what we're talking about. Oh. There we go. Starting at the high school, we have a paving project in the works. It's split between 2 fiscal years for just ease of operation. Obviously, it's a very complex building, always in use. So working with the administrative team, we're recommending the athletic wing, if you will, and then the tennis court wing be paved first this summer. And then the oval would be tackled next year. Down on the bottom is a few photos of light fixtures that we've either need to replace or have replaced recently in that middle photo. This is one of those efficiencies that we talk about. Historically, a project like this would be outsourced. It would be on-bill financing or something through Eversource's initiatives. By buying the fixtures ourselves, hanging them, replacing them with our own existing manpower, we're able to save quite a bit of money while still reaping the benefits of having more efficient lighting. So this is something we've been doing slowly over time, but there is now a line item in here for a bulk purchase of fixtures. Not pictured here is some of the doors that we need to replace at the high school. They're athletic, main, and library entrance. Those doors get an abundance of use and are beginning to really show their age. Going to Tokenique, we have a similar project where the bus loop and main parking lot need to be repaved. This was recommended last year, but it was ultimately removed from the budget. Additionally, in the bottom right photo, you'll see some cones of a drainage channel that needs to be replaced. It's no longer draining and it's becoming a bit of a tripping hazard. So we're rolling 2 projects into one on that line. Here at central office, we have some windows that are showing their age also, as well as a curb and sidewalk that's deteriorated significantly over time. Again, recommended last year, weren't moved forward, but we'd like to see these projects done. Additionally, at the central office, there are security projects that are in your budget. We can certainly talk about those as needed. Last but not least is some district-wide purchases, Suburbans for out-of-district placement,
pickup trucks for the maintenance staff and other custodial and grounds equipment that we should have on a regular replacement cycle.
Okay, any questions? Kevin, first of all, thank you for the pictures. That's extremely helpful.
Welcome.
More questions? No, wonderful. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Grateful for your time.
Have a good night.
Thanks for staying so late.
So again, we'll use the pro forma document you have, plus our financial initiatives, plus the capital plan to have a discussion with Alan on the 12th, Alan and team, with any sort of guidance that we might want to provide. Guidance we have always provided some sort of guidance. Sometimes we say do more with less. Sometimes we say bring us everything you want. Sometimes we say, try to be in this numerical range. So please don't confine yourself to feeling like guidance is only a number. It's meant to be a conversation, so that we are open and transparent with one another, about, setting, if we come in and say, Alan, we want you to be at 1%, that gives them a public opportunity to say that it's absolutely unrealistic. Here are the reasons why. And we're not, nobody's behind the scenes nudging anybody in the ribs and saying 1%. We're trying to get it up and in front at the board table. So it's a conversation. I think the goal is same with any talking with our fellow town bodies, up and in front and transparent. Okay. Discussion on September 2024 financial report and possible action on proposed budget transfers. Rich, do your usual Rich talk so fast.
Do it real quick.
But we covered this in detail also at our finance committee too. So.
Sure. So this is the financial report through September. We are forecasting a positive balance of $2,059. This is an improvement of about $60,000 from the prior month. General education RCs are forecasted at a positive $11,980, while the special education RCs are forecasted at a slight deficit of $9,921. Overall salaries are a positive $86,000. The money is largely from unfilled occupational therapists and SLP, one SLP, elementary intramurals that are only running at homes, and then some salary savings for some custodians on the new salary schedule, as well as the paraprofessional new salary schedule. Operating is forecasted at a deficit of $68,820. We do have a deficit in professional development due to the loss of the Title I funding, and then contracted OT to supplement the services while we had vacancies for our district OT individuals. However, those have been filled completely across the elementary schools. Fixed is a positive $3,947. We had a small reimbursement from KERMA for workers' compensation, and sewer came in slightly below budget. And then some savings in the 401A due to vacant positions. Revenue is forecasted at a deficit of $19,475. We do have a couple ELP students who will not be tuition paying students that were previously anticipated to be. Overall, we have two transfers recommended for the board's consideration and approval. The first is for $32,000 for professional development. This would extinguish the loss of Title I funding. We are recommending taking the funding from that credit I mentioned from workers' compensation. Salary savings from the new salary schedule left on the teacher paraprofessionals. DSS credit that we got for an outside provider for $1,100. The savings from running intramurals are only at one school. The savings from sewer being lower than anticipated. And then we have two custodians on the new salary schedule, one at the high school and one at Tokenique. And then the second transfer is for $19,475, and that is to cover that shortfall in ELP tuition. And the savings coming from, again, that salary savings, the salary schedule for the custodians, and then certified salary savings for SY.
Hey, any questions on that? No. All right. May I have a motion to approve the September budget transfers? That's John, seconded by Dennis. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Rich. Okay. Now we have the policies. You'll note the memo for the first policy, which is the vacancies on the board, is a little bit different than some of our traditional memos because we had that interim meeting in between where we heard from the lawyer and we asked him to provide us some additional language. I think in order to, because there's so many different iterations and because it came out of policy, I asked Marge just to outline what the choices were. So what I'd like to do for the purposes of the beginning of this discussion is just figure out where we want to be. So my first question for everyone is, does everyone support the addition of paragraph 1, which adds in, it's both the town charter or section 9167A of the Connecticut general statutes? Or said another way, does anyone not support adding that language? Okay, we'll add that language. Then for B, I'm going to go backwards to the memo, the third bolded section, which is unless otherwise provided by charter or special act, if a vacancy occurs on the Darien Board of Ed, the remaining members of the board shall fill such vacancy at a meeting or a special meeting convened for that purpose. That is what came out of committee. How many people want to keep the language the way it came out of committee? Raise your hands.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, it's the third one of the section B. It's the third one, which is unless otherwise provided by charter or special act. If a vacancy, you are.
I'm caught up now.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. All right. How many people would like that language?
So you're saying that versus the first bolded B?
Versus, yeah. So there's 3 different choices. At this stage, how many people want the policy the way it came out of policy committee? 1, 2, 3. Don't have a majority yet.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm still not clear. Didn't we just all agree that we wanted to have unless otherwise provided by town charter or section 9167A? Isn't that where you
So
started?
paragraph 1 is, we've just agreed to, we're adding that. The language that Matt provided for paragraph 1.
Okay, so
That's
then
it,
now
that's a
what we're
yes.
talking about says it again, unless otherwise provided by charter or special act?
Yes. Okay. So we can't, it's a fair point. We could add that again or not. And that
Okay.
is actually probably independent of the rest of the phrases.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, all right. Our original policy, said the Board of Education shall fill such vacancy with an individual from the same political party as the member who previously filled such position. How many people want that language? Raise your hands, please.
I'm sorry, can I just,
Okay.
are we looking to get to a vote tonight? Are we looking to take
Yes.
action? I understand we want to put this to bed. I just, in light of having so many options and then there's the redlining later, I kind of almost feel that it would be great to get like a consensus tonight, but that maybe we have a clean copy to vote so that
That's fine.
okay, that would be great if we could have a final reading and action. I'm sorry, Julie. I know you.
That's
wanted to
okay.
put that one to
I
bed.
can.
If we need to, I mean, let's see if there's a majority, if it's, but anyway, I should have asked you to pull up a Word document so we could. No, but so that you could scribe it in the policy so we could see. I thought about it. Okay, how many people want the language provided by Matt? Which I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's subject to the requirements set forth in the blah, 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 all the way to with an individual who is enrolled as an unaffiliated voter. Raise your hands. Do we have them? Dave,
Just to be clear, that's B of the memo, right? Paragraph four.
all of it is in B and there are 3 different options coming out of B. The first was what came out of policy. There's the original, not in that order. I'm going backwards. The first is what we just asked Matt to provide, which is specific language for an unaffiliated. The second piece of language is our original policy. The third piece of language is what the policy committee deliberated and delivered to the board.
Yeah, so I am in support of the first Matt's
Matt's
revision because he speaks directly to, it spells out everything and it specifically says when he was enrolled, the party enrolled when she was elected to the board, which we all had questions about. So I think the more specific we can be, the better.
Okay, Dave, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have to echo Katie's comments here. Like, I have no idea what I'm voting for. I can't follow this. I need a red line. I need to see this all.
Sure, that's no problem. Just tell me which paragraph you're interested in of the 3 in option B.
I don't know because I can't read the whole statute, policy in context. So I can't pick and choose like that. And I see a red line below, which I have questions on and wouldn't support as drafted. So I don't know if somehow these fit into the red line like this. I don't get it. I need to see this thing clean to understand, to be able to read it.
How can we make it clean if there are 3 options that we're trying to decide, Dave? Give us some guidance, please.
But for paragraph 1 for the entire document, because we have other sections in 9160, like is 9160 replaced in total by each of these paragraphs proposed? Or are these paragraph 1's references to paragraph 1 of 9160 versus paragraph 4 of 9160? Like,
Since paragraph 4, Dave.
So maybe Dave, do you want it to read, do you want specific language about an unaffiliated voter? Do you want the language that says it's the same political party as the member who previously filled such position? Do you want no language?
write 9160 3 times with each of these in total and let me evaluate them. So if we want to have 9160 that contains the subparagraph 1A title paragraph 1, write a policy start to finish 9160 with that language included. Write another one with the paragraph 4 language. Like I'm so sorry, but I can't get my head around what we're trying to do here as drafted. I need to see the entire policy written in one place with maybe it's 3 different flavors and I can contrast them. But this, I'm sorry, I can't track on this one.
Okay. Does anyone else have an opinion about which direction they want to go, or do we just want to wait as a board at this point? All right, 3
Are there
policies.
5 of us to make a motion to pass this tonight? Because
There's enough to vote to pass the policy. There are not, I don't think, it doesn't look like there are enough people all picking the same language. Although I'm not sure where everyone is. Dave's not sure. Robin, did you have a preference?
I'm kind of confused between the way that we're doing this right now. I kind of agree with
All
what
right,
Dave
all right.
is
3
saying,
policies,
but-
please, March. Thank you. We'll change
3
one.
policies, but everybody agreed to change paragraph.
Yes.
Correct.
Correct.
Please arrive at the next meeting. Certainly, we can deliberate, but we have deliberated quite a bit. So please come with some direction in mind unless you have a specific question. And ideally, if you have a specific question, send it in advance so we can get legal clarification. Thank you. So Marge, I'll toss it over to you to finish the rest of the policies.
Right, so the only change that the board should review is the change we made to policy 9320, which instead of putting a hard stop at 10:30 as far as meetings are concerned, is that it takes a 2/3 vote to start any new agenda item after 10:30. So you wouldn't cut off conversation and you would still allow for public comment at the end of each meeting. So we could either pass it with that language or without that.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that language. I think it gives us enough flexibility. It maintains public comment. Julie?
I'll just throw in for consideration before anybody tries to make a decision on it. Another option is that anyone could propose amending an agenda some evening if it's getting late and we want to boot something to the next meeting. And I just mentioned that because sometimes
true.
we have pretty heavy meetings and we get into very busy times of year.
Yes.
And I think it may be a little ambitious to think that we can try to avoid starting things after 10:30 over and over again. There's another way that it could be done, right, Marge? We talked about the possibility to amend an agenda.
At
and-
any
and-
regular meeting.
Yeah, at a regular meeting.
You can amend an agenda. You can also always table an item using Robert's rules. So you're right, there are other mechanisms. I think, anyway, the board, I can't even speak anymore. The board did debate for a while this 10:30 option. So this, is the way to fill out that long debate we had about 10:30.
Right.
What? Go
I
ahead.
would like to strike it. I mean, is there appetite to do that? Because we can't amend it?
I'm not in favor of that language.
I'm not in favor of that language either. I could be more open to what Julie's suggesting. I think that this is overly restrictive. Like if we just have, a financial transfer and a PAR and those, automatically get kicked out, like I think
it's not automatic. It's actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Marge, you actually would have to vote to stop the meeting?
Yes. Well, no, you vote,
Yeah.
2/3 vote to proceed. with
To
the
proceed.
Proceed with the
Oh,
meeting.
yes. Proceed. So I'm not in
Yeah.
favor.
Okay. Dave, where are you on this one?
On the fence.
Let's move 1, 2, 3. Robin, where are you on this one?
I mean, I think we're actually doing a fairly good job of trying to keep meetings. And if we start to add an entirely new process just to come to a vote, it's just going to lengthen the time of the meeting. So I don't know, I'm kind of.
All right, Dennis, where are you on this one? Thank you.
I still think it's a good idea to kind of have it, to kind of just keep us in check with, going on, so.
All right, we have 4 no's. Where are you?
I'm wondering why we have policy committee meetings and can't come to conclusions there, but I want to move forward with, as we discussed in the policy.
All right, Dave, you're the tiebreaker.
Was that to me?
Yes. No, you're not the tiebreaker because we're only 8.
We're only 8.
So we'd be 4 and 4.
It fails.
All right, so it fails. Yeah.
And this wasn't a question that came out of the policy committee. This came up at the discussion at the table here. It was brought up by a board member as a follow-up.
I'm saying in general.
Okay.
And I sit on the policy committee,
I know.
sense my frustration.
Okay, so then the motion will read, may I have, I'm going to read it out. Sarah, you'll please check me. May I have a motion to approve the proposed revisions to board policies? Okay, 9320, time, place, and notice of meetings. That one is, which,
It's one we were just talking about.
right. So Marge, did we, if we approve that one, do I have to put as amended? Because we took the language out?
Yes.
All right, as amended. 1300, 4111, and 50, whatever the rest, 5710, non-discrimination, 2700, retention, disposition of records and information, 4300, employee use of the district computer systems and electronic communications, 4025, reports of suspected abuse or neglect of children or reports of sexual assault by students by employees, 4118 and 5275, sex discrimination and sexual harassment, 5130, student attendance, truancy and chronic absenteeism, 5200, homeless children and youth, and 5220, student discipline as presented.
Make a motion.
Dave motions. Do I have a second? Julie seconds. All those in favor?
I'm sorry, Joe. We're voting on the ones that were not the time and not the vacancies.
We did not vote on the vacancy policy. The time, place, and notice of meeting is as amended. So it is without the 10:30 restriction.
Thank you.
Okay. So Dave moves, Julie seconds. All those in favor? Okay. That is Best, Lublin, Maroney, Nelson, Parent. Dave, I don't see you.
Yeah, I'm a yes.
Yes.
Brown, McCammon, all those opposed, that's Sini. That's it. Okay, personnel report, March. Yeah. Okay. In terms of action items, we have a number of questions from the various, mostly scheduling. We'll get that into the form. You guys take a look at the action item form. We'll get it distributed out to everybody and just make sure your questions are captured. And you're going to follow up with Amy and Sarah on your questions about literacy and the presentation.
Yes, and then just one other thing, the memo on the sustainable cafeteria is still marked as completed, but should there be a note here that it's going to facilities or is that?
Because it is
captured
going,
in our-
right?
It is definitely going to facilities, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
No, public
Julie,
comment.
no,
Public
public
comment.
comment, sugar. Public comment.
Good evening. If anybody in person would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium and wait to be recognized. You will have up to 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address for the record.
This is going to be quick. A lot of interesting things were discussed tonight. I was speaking to a parent regarding scheduling and scheduling across many things, the lack of discussing scheduling and moving forward with the budget and where we are today. But she said, why not AI being a more simplified, easy, less expensive way? Even I agree with Dennis, John, like $100,000 for consultants. There's AI technology right at our fingertips. Why not? Even, specifically, and most importantly, aligning scheduling across the district. Why not we just use AI? And And that's it. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Laura.
If anybody else in person would like to participate, please approach the podium. If anybody online would like to participate in public comment, please use the raised hand icon. We have no raised hands at this time.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Julie, seconded by Robert. All those in favor, that is.